And welcome back to ScavTalk, everyone. Today's episode, we're going to be doing a bit of a news recap on some of the minor changes coming up, some potential new exciting news on an upcoming patch, and some very other topics, followed by another brainstorm session where we talk about Tarkov dying and people's ideas and stuff like that. Yay!
All that fun stuff. All of that fun stuff.
So let's. I feel like I got a lot of stuff I want to talk about, so I'm going to force us straight into the news. Okay, get everyone caught up to speed. Inertia change. It was changed last week. There was
at some point
values changed. What those values mean and do, we don't know. Courtesy of Logical Solution. And then this week we got some more changes. They officially, BSG said at the different weight thresholds. Okay, so you got light, normal, light overweight, and then medium overweight, heavy overweights. Okay, at those overweight thresholds, there's a decreasing change to it. So I'm doing a horrible job at describing this. Let me just read it verbatim. Okay, for characters with the heavy overweight effect, it's been reduced by 15%. Medium overweight, it's been reduced by 7.5%. And the light overweight, it's been unchanged. Okay. Interesting enough, we got, again, Logical Solutions coming through with the technical stuff on the back end. And he reported that as far as what his people are seeing, it is just a flat 15% across the board reduction. So either way you slice it, I guess it's a good thing. But essentially, BSG said, we did this change in result of the Friday challenge, Friday balancing changes, and from the community feedback provided. So W ?
Yeah, it's very weird. I mean, there was a lot of confusion about this because exactly what Logical has said doesn't seem to match with what BSG think that they've done. And then lots of players were then reporting different things. High-level players who got high-level strength saying it felt worse, and then newer players saying, "Oh, it feels better." And then there's lots of players like me in the middle. I think I'm not even sure what my strength is, like 30 or something, around the mid tier. Doesn't feel any different to me whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a tough one. I'm not sure. I mean, yeah, fine. They're reducing a little bit on the overweight effect. I think that's because people have spoken previously about how, although it is realistic not to be able to carry all the gear, carrying all the gear, and I'm sure we'll get into this, is another element of the stuff later, but getting punished for carrying the gear kind of makes the game worse in some ways because you're supposed to loot, and there's probably supposed to be some penalty, but it's too strong at the moment. Is another thing that incentivizes people to leave raids and stuff, so that's kind of a response to that, I understand. But it's a bit confusing. I think I did see some. I was trying to find it before the cast, and I cannot find this piece of information for the life of me. And somebody said that it was like reconfirmed or clarified somewhere that basically it's just kind of like a change in the scale. And somebody else is saying that they're like, the walk speed is lower by 15% or something. But I cannot find where that was. Unfortunately,
that wouldn't make sense because that's the opposite of what they were trying to do. This was this was trying to make the effects less. So if they actually did reduce the walk speed by 50%, that would be a
well, it was something like 15% walk speed change for everybody, but then the inertia rebalancing was some kind of rebalancing, so something along those lines. But I really wanted to find it before we spoke about it, because there was somebody who spoken from like the special Tarkov streamer Discord, and someone had confirmed it there, I think, but I literally can't find it. And either which way, don't think it matters that much. I really don't.
Yeah, for sure. And that's actually interesting because that kind of coincides with some of the stuff I've been looking at behind the scenes of Tarkov SP. Is like there's a lot of different subsystems within like movement as a whole, because you got strength, you got inertia, you got weight, and these are all kind of like independent systems, but they all sort of like mesh in between, and that's kind of just what is available to directly modify. Like when BSG comes out with these over the air changes, um, it is, it's simply just changing values, in like a text document,
Yeah.
hypothetically perhaps, but it doesn't require any patching. It's sort of like built into the functionality of the game. But like last week, Airing was asking questions about. He was like, "Oh, is there any way the Tarkov SP guys know what this change means?" Because last week there was a lot of confusion on some of the language and wording, and like, what does inertia limit steps mean? Like, is this a buff? Blah blah blah. There's a lot of talk, and I was like, I don't know anyone like that, but I could probably find this stuff and play with the values and see what it did. So,
Mm.
um, that's what I did, and um, yeah, I was, I had some like theories because there's like walk speed dash Y. It's like walk speed's like the category, and then like the subcategory is like Y, X, and Z.
Mm.
And I thought and X would be, like forward and backwards would be Y, and X would be left and right, and Z would be like up and down. But no, I have no idea what Z is, but Y is like the horizontal plane, I guess, like forward, backwards, left, right,
Right.
all of that. And I'm guessing X is like vertical, like jumping.
That's
I,
weird.
yeah, but what I did is I took it because my version of Tarkov SP is on an older patch, so it's at the old 0.86 value, and so I dropped it down to like 0.000. No, I think I started high. I did like 1,000
Yeah.
dot zero, and that really didn't seem to do anything. So I did like
Oh.
0.0000001, and my PMC was like as if he didn't have a slider. It was just like permanently set at the lowest speed when like
Yeah.
moving around. It didn't matter if I moved my slider, like it was just the same speed. And so that was like, huh, that's interesting because it implies that either there's something else determining walk speed within the methods that I was tampering with, or there's a baked in sort of hard coded speed in the actual build of the game that
Mm.
can't just be, this, and this is more like um it's more of a way for them to tweak stuff on the fly. You know what I mean?
Yeah, rather make like fundamental changes or whatever. Yeah, I hear you.
Exactly. It's like the easiest way to describe it is like modding. It's like modifying something, but you can't just like make my PMC go a bazillion miles.
Onic.
I mean, you can um through like plugins for Unity and things like that. Um, but that's not really has to pertain with you know Tarkov and the over the air stuff. So, anyways, long story short, that was kind of cool to figure out. But essentially, that means for me, it's like a flat 16.3% walk speed reduction. Which, seeing as I didn't see a difference, because I even tried like one, and I didn't see a difference.
Mm.
The numbers are so small. I don't think it really matters all that much. Like, yes, you probably are moving slower, but I don't know how much that actually matters.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I agree. It's hard to know.
However, that being said, considering that I'm assuming the range is from 1 to 0, maybe it's like 1 to 0.2 or something.
Mm.
So it actually, on the other hand, it could actually be more meaningful without doing like a frame by frame analysis and comparing. I really can't give anything a definitive answer, but it was still kind of fun. The inertia limit steps thing was really confusing because it was like it's like a it's like inertia is a parent, and then the child of that is inertia limit steps, and then there's childs of that, which I think were like y and x, and
Right.
they were like 0.01, and I messed up and I started playing with those at first, and they weren't doing anything. And so I went back and started playing with inertia step limits, and I really couldn't see results. So then I was like, man, like there's like what am I doing wrong? So then I started putting on weight, and
Hmm.
because I was doing it naked, and once I
Yeah.
put weight on, I noticed once I cranked it up to like one, I think it was, um, it was like to me it was like acceleration, like it had something to do with acceleration, deceleration, like changing direction. Like it took really long to ramp up to
That makes sense. Yeah.
those higher limits. So um I believe it getting reduced was like a pretty, like it's not a good thing in terms of like moving. You know what I mean? Like it's a con. I think that one might have more implications than the walk speed, but again, it's like these numbers are so tiny, but they're basically
Mm.
multipliers, so they could be pretty massive. It's kind of hard for me to say, but it was a fun little thing to get behind the scenes and really see. Like, I have like big critiques of the inertia system as a whole, but there is a lot of intricacy and overlapping, or not overlapping, but things that systems that play with each other that make things really complicated.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. No, there was so it was quite funny. There was a thread, and Landmark actually posted in it, and he said, "Feels fine." It's basically what you said. Feels fine until you get overweight, and then you start sliding around like crazy.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I feel pretty good about that. And like I said, it was so like I had to go from like 1 to like 0.000 to see the difference, because at like 0.00 it was if like there was still inertia, but it was like it almost took no time to speed up between
Mm.
going, moving from like still to moving. Um, so yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
That checks out with me. But anyways,
Um.
they've done some changes, so maybe now it will be a bit better for people.
Yes. We shall see. There was another. So there's like a couple of other like random changes, I guess. Oh well, let's talk about the flashlights thing, because
Sure, yeah, yeah.
there was a technical patch that came through from BSG, which was basically like a load of nothing really,
Mm.
except for the item resale bug. Let me find it.
Yeah.
I didn't actually have this one up. So this one, yeah, we started a technical update. It was 3 hours long. It was like half an hour before I was about to start my stream on Thursday, and I was just like, well, I guess I'm not streaming then today. But that allowed me to bury my head into the weeds and just going a bit mad, which we'll talk about later. But and then they posted the changes, which is fix the inability to sell some items to traders that could be sold before, which is good because that's been really annoying. Like you couldn't sell Ledexes to therapists. There were like individual weapon parts, like the P90 upper that you couldn't sell to mechanic. So you're having to like disassemble stuff and sell it. Like it was just really annoying. They fixed that, and then fixed the inability to create in-game group chats. Fixed not leveling health upon successful training in the gym in the hideout, and not fixes to flashlights, which everybody was like, basically most people who wanted to complain were like, "Ree, where's the flashlight fix, Ree?" But I mean, it's in the roadmap. It's not coming in this technical patch. It's coming in the actual patch, the big patch that's coming. So the main thing on that is just you can now sell your items again, which is good. But on the back of that, there was then some information shared. Because I think so Hayes posted, is this the update with patch 0.13.0.5, which if you're shamefully not paying attention and keeping up with precisely which numerical one goes with which update, that's the first technical update, which is the flashlights one, the rework of the sky, fixing interchange and lighthouse on Oculus Audio, some bot stuff and some AI and like headset system changes in headset system. So that's the first one that was going to come on this what do you call it, roadmap. And so Hayes posted this on Twitter, and then he got some information from BSG, and they said apparently this update is expected next week. So we should be seeing this first technical update next week. So that'll fix flashlights and do all this other stuff. So we'll see what that brings. It'll obviously bring other things, unexpected stuff probably. And Nice Guy also said double confirmed on Twitter for that. So that patch is apparently coming next week. I mean, yeah, maybe it gets delayed, who knows? But like BSG have every intention, it seems, of putting that patch out next week, and they've told people that it is. So good. This is good. So finally, flashlights will get fixed. Although the flashlight fix thing. I mean, I did see it a few places, and I kind of agreed. Some people just like low key. The flashlight bug is the best bug that ever happened to the game.
Yeah, I mean, I
It's
was
been quite
thinking,
refreshing.
I was thinking that I was like, dude, this kind of would be like peak time to play because the flashlights are. I mean, I was watching Airwing and blue laser meta. I don't think
Mhm.
he's using blue laser, but you see a lot of people use blue lasers, and in my opinion, flashlights are kind of annoying in Tarkov
Yeah.
PvP because it just with everything else that goes on in Tarkov, it just makes it feel very coin flippy, even
Yeah,
more
you've got
so.
all the usual stuff. You've got aim
Right,
punch, you've got the blurriness, all that happening, as well as like, the 30% of the middle of your screen just like
right.
white for both participants. It's like, is this really good gameplay? I don't know.
Yeah,
I know
tough
Airing
one.
would never be. I know he would never be seen dead with the blue laser. But
Right.
I've been enjoying the blue laser meta. It's been good. The fights have felt good. I do think the flashlights are just too powerful. Like I know people are like, have you ever had a high powered flashlight shine in your? Oh, like it doesn't. Like shut up. Like it doesn't. Like stop it. Like how can we not learn about this realism versus it's a game mentality? Right. If it's bad for the game but realistic, probably shouldn't be in there. If it's realistic and it's good for the game, then it's a great addition. If it's good, yeah, it's just like, oh god. Anyway, I get fed up with those comments.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I like the concept of it. I think it's a you point
Mm,
you point the flashlight at them and they get like a disadvantage of some sort. Like I like visual obviously this is flashlight realism, but I don't know. I don't know what you would do there to sort of make it so that fights feel better while you're still feel like you're gaining something from a flash. Using a tactical flashlight. I don't know what the
yeah, I
answer
think
is.
some people posted some images of how it works in Rust, and it looks a
Yeah, it's
lot
a lot.
better because you can kind of
Yeah.
see like where the person actually physically is. Like you can still kind of aim at them. That's the issue in Tarkov. So you can't really aim
You
at them
can't
because the
really see what you just see the big white glow.
yeah, and it's too much. Like
You know.
maybe it could be an advantage. It obscures the head and whatever. But yeah, when at the moment it's just too. It's way too much. It means that you just miss most of the time when you're shooting at somebody with a flashlight on, and it's just
Maybe
crazy.
the a good middle ground would be like when it's when it's active, the effects being applied, you can see like their legs, but everything else is kind of like blinded. Because I think right now you can't see anything. Like you could see
No.
their crotch and below, perhaps would be like a good, you
Maybe
know.
just make the balloon like slightly just tweak it down a bit, Just tweak it down a bit and then
Yeah,
see how people feel. Like there's a middle ground where it makes sense, I'm
I
sure.
think so. I think so.
Yeah. So that's coming, which is good. This is really, really positive. And then there was a couple of other like random changes. So I guess we'll just like whip through these. And this is another logical solutions one and a hidden change that came. Min and max level for maps was added to the game, but obviously hasn't been put in place. Every map is set to 0 to 100 as the range. A lot of people have speculated that this is maybe for labs, but most likely for some kind of tutorial map. I think VSG have spoken about this before. Potentially you could set it to 0 to 14 or something. You can play on the tutorial map pre-Flea. But I don't know. That's just me speculating. But I think there's supposed to be a tutorial map that you can play that you're not going to have just sweaty tryhards all over the place, in theory at least. So that's I think is what pertains to that. But it's interesting that they're adding that. It shows that they're thinking about doing something with it at some point. I mean, I don't know whether the other maps would be. Do you remember when you played Lost Light? Were the maps level locked in that? Or could you play whatever? Because when I was playing Arena
Um,
Breakout, the maps were actually level locked in Arena, which I thought was interesting.
I think there is some type of progression lock where you only play factory, and then you unlocked other maps, if not all the other maps.
Right. Okay. So it's just completely unlocked. Yeah. On Arena, it was like level 9, you can do this one. Level 15, you can do this one. It was quite structured.
Yeah,
It's quite interesting. I mean, I don't have like huge thoughts about that. I don't think it's necessary. It depends on which way they want to take the game. Like if it's the storyline, you go through from one map to the other and you unlock it. I'd rather personally that you unlock it naturally by like extracting in that location, for example. The game be a bit more natural in that sense. But we'll
yeah.
see. There's lots of things that they could do with this particular mechanic.
I mean,
I
at the
think.
bare minimum, I would like it if you, you know, uh, potentially you would encounter people at your level more frequently. You know what I mean?
Mm.
I would like that
Like a
aspect.
pseudo skill based matchmaking kind of sort of
Yeah, I
like
mean, it's like
not
it's not
FDMM, but
Yeah, it's like it's more like progression based matchmaking, I guess. But I don't think it needs to be too forced. Like, oh, if this range and this range can only play this map, this range and this range
Mm.
can only, something like, hey, you reach this, now you got more options, something like that, because I think that helps people, who are coming in. um you're more likely to play with people at your range, or at
Yeah.
least at the beginning. I don't know, just something.
I think at the beginning it makes sense for sure.
Yeah.
So what else? Oh yes, so we did Inertia. Oh yes, there's like two other random ones. One which basically seems that marked rooms seem to have been buffed. People are reporting like loads more loot seems to be in the marked rooms. They just seem to be better, which I think is good. I do think marked rooms need a buff in general. They
Like,
just suck at the moment.
how much of a buff are we talking? Like, what are we talking? Like, you get an AK now versus a APS pistol? Like, what's
Like you were going in and there's like 3 guns. There's like MP7 and like an RSAS or whatever. There's like like stuff like
okay?
that. Actually, okay, I think.
That's not
Some
bad.
people were saying it was good. I think Airwing was saying on his that he didn't really see much difference. So I'm not sure exactly how far it goes. Like it's all
Yeah,
anecdotal from what I read.
yeah. That's what I'm worried about. Is it's copium
But
or
yeah,
not? But
so I don't know. But just like maybe if you're thinking about it, then it's maybe worth having a check at least to see whether it's worth it. And then the other one, which apparently is going to get fixed soon. I don't think this is fixed yet, but it may be by the time this cast even goes out. To be honest, is that traders not resetting and just going out of stock and then just like never coming back in stock. So like Ragman right now is like just not restocking armors and stuff. And loads of people are like, is this an event? And Beatrice was just like, no, it's actually a bug. Like, guys, like you could have, yeah, it's a temporary flea market. Yeah, we'll just, oh crap, put something together, put a Twitter post out. And they were just like, nah, it's a
yeah,
bug. We're gonna fix it. So fair enough. We're just admitting it, but
it's like the meme where the cartoon character, probably an anime character, is like, there's a butterfly and he's got his hand up and it's like, is this an event?
yeah, exactly. I know one peg replied to somebody on Twitter who was just like, his feature. So I don't know. I mean, I was kind of like half thinking like, oh, this actually could be some random scarcity thing where random stuff's not available, because it was like high-end armors and things in particular and like a bunch of guns and stuff. So I was like,
Yeah.
I wonder. But apparently not. I mean, I just want to know what they're changing in the background. It's like making this stuff happen. It's like really
Yeah.
random, right? It's just like, how does half the stuff go out of stock and not come back in stock? That's like so weird. Spaghetti code TM.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I think that's it for the updates, right? Have I missed anything off?
I think we cleared it.
Cool. So we've had a lot of random videos, a lot of interesting stuff going around the Tarkov community. And I guess this is going to be probably the most of the rest of the cast in general, because there's so much to talk about with this.
Yes.
From my perspective, this has all kind of been sparked off. Like, there's been obviously the general rumbling and disgruntlement across the Tarkov community, just because of the way the patch is, and it sucks. Like, I was talking about it with some guys in Discord the other day, and some people were saying like, oh, the wipe actually like feels like stuff feels relatively balanced compared to other wipes, and like the progression and whatever feels quite good. And I was like, you know what? It kind of is. It's the problem is this patch has been like plagued with the technical problems, right? It's like invisible players, the cheaters, with the video more so than the actual cheaters probably is the problem. And then just like the desync, like the audio stuff, the fact that no one can play, like a large proportion of the player base can't play streets, etc., etc., etc. So like all of that stuff is just like tarnished this wipe so much. There's a lot of people grumbling, probably more than normal, because fights feel bad and whatever. And there was a clip from Landmark stream where he basically said, BSG have reached out to me to ask for a list of suggestions or ideas about what to do to fix the game, to resolve the problems that people have, content creators and the general community. Just ideas, whatever, like how to fix the game. What do we think they should do? Just anything. And he was like, I'm not sure exactly what the best way to do this. Like, obviously, I want to bring in more creators. I can't just do this by myself. Asking Twitch chat's probably not a good idea. Just ask Twitch chat, and then whatever they say, we'll just send it off. That'd be funny, wouldn't it? Can you imagine? So that seems to have sparked off quite a few things. First being, well, I guess like you. Which piece do you want to talk about first? Because there was like a couple of guys who tweeted out. It's like any particular ones that you wanted to address first off.
Yeah, let me just knock Glorious tweet out real quick. So Glorious tweeted, is there any way we can be found in raid system and only apply it to quests, items, and removal of fleet restrictions so casual gamers can have fun again? And I see this a lot, is like this idea of having it applied only quests. I think it's kind of it's a pretty popular idea right now. And someone said something about like hatchlings will just come back, and then Glorious responded saying they generally rather kill hatchlings who try to make rubles than killing people in trees or bushes because they're scared of losing their last gear, or people are corner holding with right shoulder and not moving at all. The PP is not rewarding anymore. And I responded as like a genuine question, but I think it sounds pretty snarky. Wanting to know if he could explain how shooting a hatchling is more rewarding PvP than shooting someone with gear. Now there might be a bias, some illogical thinking, but the way I read it is the conclusion is PvP is not rewarding anymore, unless it's not rewarding killing people, camping, but it will be rewarding when people are hatchet running, and then there's some kind of disconnect there, obviously. But this kind of opens up a whole broader topic, but I mean, I guess just getting into it a little bit because I want to touch on it later, but there is this weird dynamic with back in the day when hatchet running was at its prime, right? Flea Market just came out. There was no found in raid. There was two things. One, it's like hatchet runners were really annoying because if you were bringing in gear, you never knew if they had already looted something, but you like always wanted to kill them because you didn't want them to like vacuum loot off the map, right? And because their main goal, for those who aren't aware, was to grab high value items, either turn them in for quests or to sell them for rubles. And again, back then there's no found in raid, so what you would do is you would go to Shoreline, you would run up to 315 or whatever the room is, loot the LEDX, and disconnect. It was it was really bad, and it's a really confusing dynamic because then it's like you do that, you get your money, and then you go out with your gear and then shoot people and you die, and it's like, oh well, let me go back and build the money. Like it's just this weird loop. It's like a lot of extra steps to do PvP essentially, but it's like something you could do. But I think the best way to describe it is like it's way more sandboxy in that you essentially have a reliable way to participate in low risk, high reward gameplay where you can go in, risk practically nothing, and if you're successful, your outputs is insanely profitable. And from there, you have all this money, and it's kind of like you can just do whatever you want. It's very like open sandboxy type of thing. But there's like a weird interaction where it's like the people they get this money, and then you would buy the gear. It's just like a weird inflation. It's almost like, I think maybe I'm doing a lot of mind reading here, but maybe what Glorious means is that he would rather have hatchet runners in the game so that they would get monies to bring in gear to run around PvPing later. I don't know if that's the case or not. He said he's working on a video, and I look forward to seeing what that video entails.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what he says, because I just feel there's kind of two parts to this, right? A, I don't think that you can just accept hatchlings back into the game as a thing when it was so bad. People obviously did it. Like, there are more players that play the game casually and are new and are scared and would just find out about the hatchet running, and it's just like, well, I'm not scared anymore. This is easy. Because I could just make as much money as I like. And then even if they'd like, half these people don't end up even going in geared or whatever, they just like hoard rubles and stuff. It's just like weird. It's just like super weird. I just don't think we ever want to go back to that. So I don't want to introduce any new stuff in that brings that back. I agree with you, right? It's like, I don't think PvP is going to be any more rewarding. You running in, you killing a guy in the room, and like, oh, he's already stuffed the LEDX in his butt, and you killed him. Like, that's not gonna help. That's really not gonna help. And also, a slot in the raid is taken up by somebody with no gear on. Like, it's just not.
It doesn't.
We can't let that back in. We just can't. I disagree fundamentally. The other section to this, without going like into every single possible topic, remove flea restrictions so casual gamers can have fun again. We've also been there, and that didn't happen. There was a small number of players that did do that were kind of experienced, or it's usually people who were experienced that came to the wipe like later or whatever, and they're like, oh, I can just go on, make a bit of money, buy class 5 armor off the flea and then just run around. Majority of people not doing that. Majority of people were crafting M61, selling it to chads, buying like really cheap guns, whatever, and basically the chads could then just buy whatever they liked. And it's not even the chads. Like I avoided, because all of this kind of is about, apart from my perspective about the video that I just made and literally released today. And I avoided calling people chads because it's not even chads. It's like guys at level like 40 plus basically who have figured out the game. They can buy anything they want from the traders, so economically they're better off. And then that means that the spare money they've got left over, they can buy anything they like. And I had a clip. I mean, even once you figure this out, it's like pretty easy. I've got like a clip in there of me completing Stir Up at level 12 with an Altin and a Gen 4 on.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, do we want to go back to that? Like, I don't think so. Like, I don't think casual players have fun in that scenario. I really don't. Like, the early game completely disappears. Like, the early game's gone after 6 days for 7 days, like for sure.
Mm-hmm.
It's just madness. I don't understand why we'd want to go back to that. Like, everybody complained so much about how the game felt back then. Why would we want to go back to this? I can't see. I think people are like looking back with rose tinted glasses at this stuff that people were like complaining so much about when it was actually in existence.
I don't know. I guess I just feel there is some particularly with like the way Glorious Eve worded it just feels like it's you could almost interpret it in like a really negative light. Like he would rather kill people that are defenseless than people that have gear in the corner, and because PvP is better that way. Like I guess if like your depiction of PvP is you always killing the guy that has a knife, and you have all the power, you know what I mean? Like it's just like I don't know. It's just the whole thing's really weird, but I bet secure container in a like abuse, I'll say, is essentially makes progression optional. You you can basically not do anything progression wise, and I guess with the flea market too, in tangent, I should say, you can not do you don't have to participate in progression. You only have to do the bare minimum, which is level 10, and then from that point you just need rubles, and you can skip like, in the entire progression.
It's the whole it's going from like one end completely to the other end, right? It's like the systems we've talked about, and we'll probably touch on these again later, are things like rebalancing the trader pools versus the in-raid loot pools and stuff, so that low-level players can find more items in-raid, and same with high-tier players too. They can't buy everything they want off the traders. That's sort of like a halfway house. Like what we're doing here is we're saying like, oh, now Timmy's can't buy armor or ammo or guns off the flea. So let's just open up everything so that anyone can buy anything again. Like, it's just, I think it's way too, we're just going like this. Go from one end to the other. It was like that before, everyone hated it. We're in the situation right now, people don't like it. We're going to flip all the way back to the way it was before. People don't like it. The fundamental question here is, and it's an assumption that I make within my arguments, honestly. Mm-hmm. Do you believe that completely unbridled flea market and a lack of finding raid allows casual players to have more fun? I think the answer is no. But it's a base assumption that I make, and Glorious clearly disagrees with me. I don't think that his post, by just the guy that he is, right? I don't think that his post is trying to make life harder for casuals. Like he says in his post, I want more casual players to have more fun again. I think he's wrong, but there's a big difference of opinion in the player base about like whether this system allows casuals to have more fun. And I think a lot of people forget how players play the game in the first wipe, the second wipe, like. It's so different to the way that us, after even 3 wipes, right? The guys who like start off playing the game, it's just you don't participate in the having fun from all the meta gear, right? Like I was absolutely terrified out of my mind to bring Attack Tech into raid on my first wipe. Mm-hmm. I did it once, I think, and it was terrifying. I like crawled around shoreline. Like it's completely different mentality. I just think anybody who believes, and this is just my personal opinion, and I might also be wrong, but I feel that we've been here before, and I think that anybody who thinks that we remove finding raid and remove the flea restrictions, that if they think that will help casuals, I just think they're wrong.
Well, let me ask you this: what is casual in your definition?
Well, it's tricky because casuals kind of encompasses like new players plus also people who are experienced that don't play very often.
But your definition, like in your context, what does casuals mean?
I mean, I'm being loose with my terminology, so I do think you have to split the two down. And when I was talking about this grouping of players, I did actually say this. Some players would buy a Vepr Hunter with M61 and go around killing chads, but the new players can't do that. Or the people who were so casual that they never got good. Do you know what I mean? It's like some people who played a lot,
Yeah.
who got good, and now they can play casually with the open flea, and they can have fun without doing too much. But the guys who are like new or just don't ever get, they get to like level 25 every wipe or something. They never put enough time in the game to beat a Chad in 1v1 with a Vepr Hunter with M61. Even if they buy it, it just means they're going to lose more money when they lose the ammo. So I feel like there's two separate player bases here for the casual player. When I refer to that, I mean I'm being a bit sloppy too. So that's I'm kind of grouping both of them together, I guess. But
Okay.
so there is a subset, I suppose. I will admit that like would have more fun, I guess. But I just think on the whole, there's way more players in the first camp of like not good at PvP, want to just get progression in the game, and new, don't know how to play the game at the top level, don't understand the value of armor, and blah blah blah. Haven't spent 200 hours watching videos like mine to explain exactly why all this stuff is good or not. They're bringing in PST ammo in on 9mm and PS ammo in on AKs and whatever because they just don't really know and getting frustrated by 16 hits to armor and dying and stuff like it. Those are the people that I'm more worried about. Like the guys who are casual, experienced but don't play a lot, they'll find a way. Like whichever way, they'll find a way. So it's more the other guys that I'm more concerned about.
Yeah, to sort of like support what you're saying. I think colloquially, casual and hardcore, you kind of depict like casual as like, yeah, I'm a gamer. I play games, and they play like Fortnite on their phone or something, and then the hardcore gamer is like the basement dweller that's got like a neck beard and balding and glasses, and oh my god, I'm describing myself, and they're playing like WoW or something for 48 hours, and they got a poop bucket behind them. That's kind of like the colloquial terms, like one way. The other, I think, more in-depth version, I guess, I don't know, would be casual is like you prefer games that are low investment. You don't have to like invest a lot of resources to play and to experience every time. Hardcore gamers, they like those intricate systems and a lot of depth to it, That being said, I think in the hatchet running meta, it favors those types of casual players where you don't have to invest a lot into the game. You put in I don't know, 4 hours, 6 hours, you get flea market. That's just the big milestone. Once you hit that, hey baby, it's open season. You just run around, low investment, grab, you get a couple lucky loot, do some scav runs, boom, you got all this money. What do? You start playing with the different aspects of the game. It's very like low investment. Whereas in the version we're in now, I think there's a lot more investment. You have to unlock this milestone and this milestone and this milestone and this milestone. It's I think in like the new player's sense, this version is better because it does sort of walk you through. Everyone's kind of like has to go through the same route, so to speak. So people still accelerate fast that are really good, but it's a little bit better for new players. But like for casual players, I think it's kind of worse. Like, because you have to. If you want to experience the game, you got to do all the things and learn all the things, and reach those different progression milestones.
Yeah, I guess that is a point. I mean, the thing about the hatchling thing, it's just like that playstyle doesn't get those players to improve, even though it is kind of like open season.
Yeah,
I can kind of see what you mean. Like in some sense, though, like do the casual players of the game figure out that strategy or not? I'm not. I think that's another question. It's like when I first started playing, I didn't really engage that much with the social media element of the game, particularly. So like, I didn't even think about hatchet running until a bit later, right? Because it's like the hatchet running thing is almost a metagaming hardcore thing in some sense.
It is, yeah.
So it's like it's hard to draw the line.
Yeah, no, for sure. Because no, you're absolutely right. Because I think it is sort of one of those things. I don't think I was really consciously aware of it. Like obviously I understood to put valuable things in my butt, but it is sort of those things like, what valuable things do I put in my butt? You know what I mean? Like, what's valuable? There's a lot of questions to it. So yeah, I think you make a good observation there. Um,
Yeah. So that's Glorious's post. I think that's kind of everything I want to say about that.
Yeah.
Then what's next? So there was a video. So there was a video from Landmark. It was on his stream. I actually
Mhm.
only saw this later. So I didn't see that before, like coming to all my conclusions or whatever. But I did see Tiggs's some of his commentary about,
Right.
like, he has part of like Landmark's commentary in his own commentary as well.
Mhm.
So I
It's
did watch his
basically a
first.
stream. It's like clips from his stream put in
Yeah,
video.
and it touches on like lots of different things, and I think
Right.
it's one of those things because Landmark's in a conversation with chat as well. Like, people are bringing up different topics. They're talking about this element and that element, and like loot, and then about like inertia and like weight and PvP and people leaving and like this mechanic and that mechanic. It's like it's very disparate, which is kind of the issue with a lot of these
Yeah.
things. It's like, is that useful feedback for BSG? Like, yeah, I'm sure it is in some sense, but like, how do you actually implement all these things together in a way that kind of makes sense? So I watched all of those things and then came to my own conclusions. I mean, but I don't know whether you want to talk about that now or if you want to talk like more of the precursor stuff, like Tiggs's video, because I know you have like a bunch of notes about it.
I'll just go over the highlights from my notes, and then just we could just do whatever. Yeah, because I watched it, and then I was like, I got some stuff I want to talk about, and then I realized, okay, I need to watch it again and take notes. Um, so, I guess sticking to the more important stuff here. Um, there's kind of this part where it talks about rat gameplay is the best way to play the game. Um, and it's like, I think that's true if you look at Tarkov as like A to B game. Um, Meaning like, what's the best way I can win, 100% of the time in PvP. I'll just sit and camp choke points, and because like the core objective of the game is to extract. That's how you win. Like, that's the win condition, is you extracting. So if you just camp the extract or camp these trick points that lead to an extract, like it's kind of a it's a legitimate good strategy, in my opinion. A little too strong, but that's a whole nother topic. However, I would say tasking is probably the best way to play Tarkov. If you think of it more as like a sandbox looter shooter PvP VE instance based extraction game, it's sort of a it's like, if you hyper focus on PvP, that's, I think what Tiggs is saying is true. That's probably the best way to win at PvP. But I don't think that's like what Tarkov is trying to be, is a PvP game.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's definitely for sure. I mean, there's the part of like the part of what has made me think so hard about this topic is because of, I guess, just like just trying to think about what is going to make everybody happier, because like there is a problem with Tarkov's kind of end game loop, and you don't want the game to be about PvP all the time.
Yeah.
I was fiddling with something and messed up the audio on my stream. Sorry, guys. Should be okay now. You don't want the game to be about PvP all the time, but Tarkov still suffers from this late wipe kind of malaise of, and this is irrespective of technical issues, right? It's just like people get bored with the game.
Yeah.
PvP doesn't give you enough, like, especially since, like, because people used to play until, well, the player base has always dropped off. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So the core committed hardcore group of people used to play into the late game regardless, and it was still fun.
Yeah.
And still exciting. And the way that those Chad players feel, I think, like, sometimes because of the way that they I'm just going to use the general they, not talking about anyone in particular, but like the way that they talk sometimes like it gets the backup of like the regular player, because
Yeah.
it sounds like, oh, we just want to be, killing all the time and that's all we want to do in the game and blah blah blah. But like once you get to the end, there's nothing else. So you kind of want to, what you want is you want to have both, right? That's definitely what you want to do. You want to have both. And the issue is that there are mechanics in the game, I believe, right now, like Finding Raid, that were targeted at something else. Like so Finding Raid and the Flea restrictions to some extent, they were targeted to fix another problem, but they then degraded the value of PvP for one reason or another. And we've ended up in a situation where PvP just kind of feels like, people say PvP. Okay, so let's pose this question. PvP feels unrewarding, is what a lot of like experienced players who play for PvP say. Why is this exactly? Why is PvP unrewarding? I've been trying to get to the bottom of this, and I mean, I'm going to ask a rhetorical question. I mean, you can give your answer, but I think it is. I think it just ultimately comes down to money. And some people have said, like, I had a lot of discussions about my video about people being like, "Oh, is it about money though? Because these people know how to make money, blah blah blah." And I'm like, yeah, they know how to make money, but not making money whilst doing PvP is really dull. Like having to go and like fund the money runs by going and looting 10k plus slot items and then go back and playing more PvP, it just kind of sucks, right? Like knowing that your kill didn't actually gain you anything. Like, what did it gain you? Yeah, you killed somebody and that's fine, right? There's the fun of that. But to take loot and then feel like you're making progression on your account, like that's what makes Tarkov good. Even if you have 100 million rubles, getting to 150 million rubles with PvPs, you're going to feel good, even if you're not going to spend it or use it. Like it's, in my opinion, that's partly what Tarkov is about. That's why people like it. Like I don't think it's like the ultra wealthy, right? Why do they need to keep making more money? They don't, but they're keeping score with each other. It's like it's partly that. Like people just like number go up. We're simple creatures at the end of the day.
So is it fair to say that PvP on its own is not good enough?
What do you mean by that?
Like,
like the incentive just to PvP are not good enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say no, because at that point, arena may be different, but Tarkov is then just COD with extra steps or whatever, like just playing PvP, like the load times are too long, all of this stuff. Like unless you feel like you're making some kind of progression, however artificial that may be, that's up for you to decide. But I just think that like going in and killing, because that's the thing, people could like, this is definitely exacerbated by the technical problems that we have. So we do have to bear that in mind, for sure. Yeah, the PvP kind of feels like dog because you get killed behind walls, and also the cheaters thing sometimes, and also you get shot through the arm and it hits you twice, and then you die to 9x20 whatever. There's all of that too. So it's like all of these things are intermeshed. But I do feel that like if you're not going to gain like progression, however artificial that may be, through PvP, it's just not going to feel good. It's just the way that people are designed, I think.
So if PvP is not good enough on its own, then why are we trying to buff PvP? Why do we need more PvP?
Because if you buff the way that PvP rewards the player, then it would feel good enough. And there's other ways to do this too, right? You don't just have to make it like economically better, right? Like there was a couple of comments in general about how the issue, and I do agree, honestly, I do agree. The issue with the game is that every item is looked at in terms of rubles rather than in terms of its value to yourself. And because of the relatively, well, the flea market just in general means that, and also traders, more so traders actually at the high level, means that you can buy everything that was on the guy you killed. So its value is greatly diminished. That I think holds a lot of weight. But the problem there is that the solutions that people have come to in the various comments that I've spoken to is just like, delete the fleet, make the game into a hardcore mode. And I'm like, that's fine, but you're going to have no more new players playing the game ever. So that's why I think that you should have two characters, right? Because like
maybe
the
not
game,
a bad thing though.
The game is the game dies, right? I think if you make the game like super hardcore with no fleet and like then everything feels super rewarding PvP, the game just dies on its own.
Yeah, I mean it's probably not sustainable, but
yeah, I don't think it's sustainable.
Like,
I think it probably
just
is good for the game, right?
Yeah, just from a pure like number standpoint, if let's say they deleted like ultra hardcore, right? And let's say they lost 50% of players. I think like the Australia servers would be unplayable. Like you'd be the only PMC. Like there's gonna be certain regions that are like, because it's region based, there's gonna be certain regions that are gonna be screwed. So
yeah,
I think it's unsustainable. But okay, this is what I want to say, just to sort of like jump to what I'm getting at here is for me, I've done the PvP thing and it is fun, but you need more. Like, it's not just gonna have to kill one guy, you need to take on two guys. It's not good enough just to kill two guys, you need to take on three. You know, it's not good enough to use the meta stuff, you gotta use the crappy stuff. Like I personally don't think PvP in Tarkov is that great. Like, there's interesting, like, the things that support PvP are interesting, but like the actual like player versus player in like the shooting mechanics, you know, the how you win kind of just turns into, and this is more of a technical issue, to be fair, turn on flashlight, shift W, spray at the guy, you know, constantly move around because audio is LMAO, you know. It's just like I swear there's I swear what people do, it's like you move around a bunch and then you stand still in like a weird position and they'll be like, oh, is he, and they'll peek out, it's like, oh, is he here? It's like, no, he's here. Oh, I went, you know, it's just like, because the audio is so anyways, getting my point, I think that it's all about chasing the adrenaline high, right? So like because once you do the, you know, couple first wipes of Tarkov, you know, you experience that tactic rig fear where you're like, this is, you know, my tactic. I'm like the only one in my stash, you know. It's like, even though I got like 20 million rubles, like, you know, it's like, it means something. There's this huge intensity. Like, it's such a good feeling, but that stuff, you start to get used to that. And that sucks because you got to like come up with new ways to create that sort of intensity. And I think PvP tries to fill that void, but in my opinion, it becomes more of a task to do PvP because you got all the buying, the selling, the gearing up. I mean, they're trying to relieve some of that stuff, but it's like, in my opinion, they're going the wrong way, where I think they need to focus more on creating, like, making the game intense as like the loop. Like, you know, if I don't get this water collector out, then I'm not going to have water for the next 2 days, and my PMC is going to start to rate dehydrated. Like, this means everything. You know, saying that 28 days into the wipe, you know, that's what, like, they need to create ways, because that's like PvP kind of happens naturally. You know what I mean? I don't know. I'm just kind of all over the place, but it's
complicated. I mean, I've been thinking about also just like other stuff. I probably won't talk about it too much, honestly, but I'll dip into it a little bit. I've been playing like the tiniest little piece of DayZ. I've been like,
oh yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, I've been dabbling a tiny little bit into the game, just like playing it here and there, just a little bit. And it's just so interesting how, you know, Tarkov's got this. They're almost like these games, these extraction or survival shooters. They're almost like roguelikes in many ways. So like DayZ is very much like an actual roguelike. You know, you go, you do your run, you do all the stuff, you die. I mean, yeah, there's bases and some servers, and like it depends on the server, right? But the vanilla DayZ experience is mostly roguelike. You know, you die, you start back on the shore. You're miles away from where you died.
It's a pure roguelike, pretty much. Yeah.
Pretty much. I mean, there are some exceptions to that rule, but it's pretty much like that. Tarkov is very much like a roguelite, right? So you finish your run, you get to buy some upgrades, and then you get to go again, right? It's like it's different. It's completely different, and it's just interesting. Because, like, you know, I've just gotten to the point of like figuring out. I mean, I'm on some random server, and I've gotten to the point where I've got some stuff, so I can begin at least. Like, I'm not fully self-sustaining, but I've come across like the first military loot points. And I've got like a red dot, but I can't put it on anything. And it's like it's just so different, right? It takes so long to progress in DayZ in comparison to EFT, and if you die, you lose everything. So that kind of is what gives the game its longevity. That you just play the loop again and again. Like, there is no end game.
That's exactly how Project Zomboid is.
Exactly. And you're always having to do that thing. You're always like, when you die, you're starting, like, even if you're a 4,000-hour player, you're starting from zero, you're struggling for water and whatever, and you have to solve those problems, and you'll be better at solving those issues, and you know where the points are on the map and stuff like that. But you still have to worry about it, and people still get unlucky and die, and whatever, you get like a disease and you run out of meds and you can't find it. You run into somewhere and there's enforced PvP and someone's geared and you're dead again, right? It's like that, it just happens, and that's the game loop in DayZ. So it's kind of more self-sustaining in many ways. It's quite interesting in Tarkov that you get to that point where like you've got max traders, you've got all the access to all the things you could ever want, and it's like, I mean, that's it. That's the end of the game.
Yep.
That is it. So whether that can ever be fixed, I don't know. But I mean, improving in PvP is much more of a thing, I guess, because you're just going in every raid geared. You're like, right, I'm improving my skills. For some people, that's enough. For some people, it's not. Probably not right now, because the PvP technical aspects of it are really bad. Because as you say, there's like desync, way too much desync. Audio completely sucks. I had like a really weird fight. I was like muttering about it before while you were talking. Sorry, I was a bit rude. And I had this like weird fight on Lighthouse, and I kind of forgot that like not everything on Lighthouse is fully done. Like, it'll be interesting to see what it's like after next week. I could not tell what level the guy was on at all. Like every time I ran out, I was just like, oh, he's not there. And then I ran through, just like, he should be through this. Nope, he's not. He's downstairs. Oh no, he's actually gone up this stairwell. I was just like, what the hell, man? And like that combined with the desync of like you run out and then you get shot in the stomach, behind the wall and stuff, and you're just like, oh man. And like having to play thinking about it from a desync perspective just doesn't feel great. Like it's all of that adds to the frustrations of PvP. But yeah, I'll stop before we go too much into that.
Well,
like, it's obvious.
For me, I am uncertain if all those things were addressed. For me personally, if that would make PvP, like I would do the PvP grind again. I just, even if they made loading fast and you geared up, like that's what I mean. It's going to be really interesting to see Arena, because I honestly don't feel like, me personally, I'm going to enjoy Arena PvP gameplay. Like, who wants to do right lean peaks and turn on flashlights and you know what I mean? Like, it just, blur, aim punch, like all the inertia, like all these things just kind of sound not that fun to me personally in Arena. But they got some type of economic side, so that has me interested. And there's a ladder, so there might be something there. But I'm not putting a lot of chips in Arena. I'll definitely check it out. But
yeah, we're gonna have to see.
Going back to the roguelite and roguelite thing, I think if you want your roguelite to be more like a roguelike, or rather, something that has a bit of a non-linear conclusion to it, you basically strip away your permanent upgrades, but slowly. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that way you always sort of have a reason to return and play.
That sounds really bad though. In some ways, it's like the memory skill or whatever. Like, and in some ways, like the roguelike games where you just die and you have to start fully from scratch. In some ways, that's like, it's so crushing, but it's almost
major.
better.
Yeah,
it's almost better than just like, oh, a GPU popped in your.
Well, is it though? Because would you rather lose a GPU or would you rather lose your entire stash? I mean,
it's a completely different thing, I guess.
They're on two. I think they're on two different. I think if that's the route they wanted to go, I don't think it is personally, because I think they are doing a linear experience. But for it, like, this is the interesting thing with V Rising I'm playing currently and trying not to obsess about. It is a very linear game, and there is PvE and PvP, but there's hardcore servers where when you die and to players, instead of dropping just the items you picked up, you also drop your gear.
Right.
So and there's like base rating, right? So it's like you could potentially, but you have some upgrades that can't be stripped away, like the spells you unlocked from killing all the bosses, and those recipes unlocked that you got for killing those bosses. But like, you can lose your base, all of your resources, your gear, because your level is associated with your gear. Effectively, your damage and HP is all associated with your gear. So like, when you go from like level 40 to level 0 and you respawn, you're just like, dude, you're not doing anything. You know what I mean? You could run back maybe, but it's such a. But for me, it kind of helps keep the game interesting and sort of like not so linear, because when you do the linear thing, you get to the end, it's just kind of like, well, now what? It's like, oh, PvP. Yeah. How good is that? It's kind of contingent on that, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like in V Rising, would you carry on playing just for the PvP?
Maybe now they've expanded the depth a lot more, so maybe
Okay.
now, but we'll see.
But in the past, no. And so then that's
At
kind
the
of the
past,
same thing. You
no,
get,
yeah.
yeah, you get to
Like
the point where,
I
like,
did a
okay.
little bit, but it fizzled out so fast. I mean, the numbers speak for themselves on V Rising, the concurrent player count. But anyways, it's still like these things aren't bad, to be clear. Like, Tarkov's popular for a reason. V Rising's also popular for a reason.
Yeah,
They're
they don't
good
all have to be the
games.
same. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't all have to be, games that last for a millennium. You know what I mean? It's gonna be okay. Uh,
Yeah, and
okay,
Tarkov has wipes for a reason, right? And PSG have accepted that as well.
yeah.
So
Moving forward. So okay, this was interesting. So Landmark said weight should not be in the game. It goes against all the core mechanics of the game, punish players for engaging with the basic mechanics of the game. He also says weight and movement speed modifiers should only be tied to the gear. Loot shouldn't affect your weight. The game is a looter shooter. It punishes you for looting and shooting. It's so backwards it makes no sense. And I mean, this kind of is like a funny statement, right? Because I mean, in that context, I mean that's kind of true, right?
yeah, it's hard to disagree with him. It's purely on what he's talking about, right?
Yeah, but like that's if you assume Tarkov is a looter shooter. Like I feel like I could make, assuming I was actually a skill game dev, but if I had the ability and resources, I feel like I could make a really compelling game for Tarkov or for Landmark that he would enjoy. Where essentially it's essentially like Quake, um, arena gameplay,
Mm.
but how you win is looting them. Like you get like collect like tokens off their bodies, and if you got a bunch of tokens and you don't make it out, then you're in last place. But if you kill a guy that has a bunch of tokens, it's just like some weird bounty for killing players, and you stack them up and then you extract. Because that kind of sounds like what
Yeah.
maybe they want is like it's just like your success is measured by the value that you were able to get off the map from the map itself or players that were also trying to do the same thing, and that's the only thing that matters, that like, you know what I mean? Like you're not punished for looting stuff. It's like, oh, you picked up an item. But to me, I think that makes it more interesting as like, oh, you got all these tokens on you. Now you're heavier, like you're more of a target, but it's like the risk reward thing, but to each their own.
Yeah. I think the issue with that is that it's like a lot of the top level players are just bored of the looting aspect of the game in many ways. And
But yeah,
it's just a complicated one. Because like I kind of like I know what he means, and I do sort of agree to some extent with the logic, but I'm trying to think of some kind of anecdote that makes sense for this. It's almost like I don't know. There's something to be said though for the fact, okay, the game is a looter shooter. You're supposed to be looting, but the more that you try to loot, the harder the game gets for you.
mm-hmm.
Okay, isn't that fine? Isn't that the way it is? It's like, okay, we're going to play
you're
an economic
punished.
sim,
You're punished for
right?
trying to complete the
Well, it's not
objective.
necessarily. It's not necessarily like. Well, but it depends what you mean by punished, right? People are throwing
Right.
around these words like punished. It's like
Mm-hmm.
you could replace the word with challenged, and it becomes completely
Yeah,
different, right? It's
absolutely.
like oh, I'm playing a space economic sim where the idea is to accumulate all the money in the galaxy or whatever. It starts off easy, but as you get more money, you get there's like faction rivalry or whatever, and you start getting attacked because
Right.
you're like starting to become a big player, and it gets more difficult to achieve the objective. Isn't that the idea behind games?
Yeah.
And in Tarkov, right, it's like it's risk reward on how much you take out per raid versus how much you want to have on you. And you can still throw your backpack on the floor. So there are mechanics to avoid some of the downsides, but it's like again, then you have to then manage the backpack and stuff. Like I'm just not sure if I agree entirely with it because
Well,
putting more challenges for the player as they pursue the objectives that the game gives them, I don't think is inherently a bad thing.
I agree. And I think this ties into the idea that in like your space conquest analogy, if you are being targeted, maybe you want to take a wormhole to another galaxy, and then secure some of your resources. In other words, because people are challenged for carrying all this loot, they want to like secure it, so they want to get out and they don't do PvP. I think that also plays into, like, in other words, what he's saying is like if they weren't challenged for looting and they weren't affected by any of this loot they picked up, um, they're like effectively walking money bags. It's just like that's why it makes me think they kind of just want. I say they, but like he wants some sort of thing where you're rewarded for shooting players. That's like the main goal, but you can't be punished. Like it doesn't really make sense. Like everyone just starts off like $500, and then each player you keep getting more and more money. But I don't know. Like it's like, even in that situation, it's a conundrum because wouldn't you want to get out with the money?
Yeah,
what I mean.
Yeah.
It's just
I know what you mean. So there was a couple of there was one comment actually that made me really think about stuff, which I was like, oh, that's kind of cool, because that element is one of the core things that I was trying to fix with the video that I made. And on that particular, there's a chart that I put up, which is the problems that we need to resolve that have been resolved in the past, which is hatchlings having to survive with quest items, trader items blocked from resale, flea market not having in-game gear, decent pacing in the early white, players staying in raid, and PvP being satisfying because of fair gear resale. There was actually something that I'd forgotten about for the specific element of players staying in raid, which could solve some of the problems. And I haven't had a chance yet to go, because I was like literally just trying to reply to as many comments as I could on the video before the ScavTalk started. So I was like gathering as much feedback as possible from people. I haven't had a good chance to think about where it would fit in and if it would allow me to release another criteria. But someone reminded me about the loot drops. And I think that is the genius idea for players staying in raid, right? That's the solution. Being able to drop your loot, being able to drop your loot off at like a car or something like that, and then carry on in the raid. Because BSG said that was coming at some point, especially for streets. But they actually said it was coming to the game, and that like would incentivize people to stay in raid, but then they don't lose everything if they die. It's like almost like a nice, but people kind of know where it is. Like it might be contested to do that. Like it could be interesting. I don't know. Like it's a potential solution. As I said, I haven't fully thought through the ramifications of exactly how that fits into like my own framework yet. But it was one that stood out to me as being like, that would actually be kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like a inverse of the cycle. The cycle is like the raid stays open extremely long and people are like coming and going. Let's hypothetically say the raid never ends. It does end. It's like 8 hours or something, but because I think stability reasons. But let's say hypothetically it doesn't end. People are constantly coming and going, and it makes it sort of feel fresh. And if you want, you can stay in really long and like wait for respawns, try to get a lot of stuff. I mean, you have that option. Whereas this thing is like, okay, you have a static window, 45 minutes, and you, instead of like coming and going, you stay in and you try to get as much as you can into the thing that vacuums it out for you. Like why would you? I mean, there's so many. Obviously they got to think of some things, but like in that case, why would you ever want to extract? You could just, maybe you only can use it once.
Maybe if you die, you get none of it. I don't know, but that doesn't make any sense even. That doesn't even work.
I don't think
because then it invalidates the whole point of the thing. Maybe the stuff like I don't know.
Like it's a giant and raid secure container essentially. It's just a big secure container you interact with.
Yeah, but you have to go there. It's static on the map. It's not like on your player. So there's a big difference there. Gosh, I'm not sure.
But even that has implications, because now this makes it also more interesting, is that it's now a new objective on the map. In other words, a new spot to camp.
Or to fight over or whatever. But like maybe to camp.
Yeah, I mean, I'm being facetious, of course.
But I thought that was an interesting one. Like it's a potential. Maybe you could work that into something. I don't know yet. Like As I said,
there honestly might be something there.
Yeah, I spent like 3 days and an entire morning talking with people on Discord to make the video that I did make, to try to think of like all the random crap that could go wrong with these systems or that system, or why this does work and doesn't work, and refining it and blah blah blah. So I'm not going to be able to fit that in and on the fly in 5 minutes. It's just not the way this stuff works. But it was one of the interesting comments that stuck out.
All right, let me try to wrap up the TIGs part so we can jump on to your video. Although we kind of already have, but anyways,
Probably.
Yeah, just to try. I just want to get past a couple of these comments here. We can skip that one. So this was interesting. Tixing's gear should be sellable, but ammo should not be sellable on the Flea. Armor will be balanced because supply and demand concept, and ammo will be balanced because of it being unsellable. Plus the inherent relationship of armor and ammo, like how, armor is like breakpoints, very breakpoint key. Like you got class 6. There's not like 6.5. Technically there's class 6 that's ceramic and class 6 that's titanium or whatever, and it doesn't really make it any better at stopping rounds that can penetrate class 6, but it makes it better at absorbing more rounds from lower tier calibers. So it's kind of a weird thing, but if as long as you have the ammo breakpoint, then you kind of just always win against the armor, that you're fighting against. So, I thought that was interesting. I don't think that this is the problem. I think is armor is like if you had no found in raid again in his concept. I'm not sure if, because there's basically a multitude of problems that arises. But in short, if you can reliably generate money, then I don't know. We'll move on because I want to touch on that part later. But
it's just tricky. I just think that it comes back to one of my core tenets, which we'll go through. But I just think it ends the early game.
Flamer, I think you should flip trader ammo on the Flea. I was surprised to hear them say that, but I think there's this sort of mentality like I should, I worked here, I should get the reward. I should be rewarded, in other words.
And casuals are better off because they're buying the ammo for me, right? I just don't think it works. I don't think it actually works. We've been there before. I just don't think it works.
It does work for casuals because they don't have to invest much.
But they're going to die anyway. It doesn't help them.
Yeah, but it's a win-win. The casuals get to not check out the game essentially, and the hardcore guy gets all the powerful upgrades all the time. He has infinite money. I mean, they can also get infinite money. They have to hatchet run though, but they can also get infinite money.
It's just such an awful thing. You've got hatchet runners on one side, who are the people who figured out the meta. You've then got casual players who are just getting stomped on by players, with all the gear because it's accessible all the time. And then you've got casual players who are scared to go in with a good gear because it is still expensive because they don't know how to make money yet. I just don't think it's good.
This is the other thing. I want to get into later but if we'll just do it now. You don't even have to know the meta. This is the part that like General Sam and Pestily even talk about that, I mean, you guys know me, I have a strong stance against secure containers, but if you allow people, if you remove found in raid, and you, in some ways you do incentivize PvP more, because there's been plenty of times where I have a graphics card on me in my butt and it's like, hey, my kit's paid for and some, you know what I mean? It's like, why not just push this guy? Like, who cares? You know what I mean? Like, I don't really care if I die, like, but I think the problem is then you break Tarkov, where the goal of survival extracting is meaningless. Like, there's kind of no point to it. And you don't have to be a hatchling. You can be a fully geared player, but if you're the container is worth more than your kits, you're kind of just breaking the game. So I don't know. I think that's a big problem with this whole like remove found in raid thing. Is I'm personally for this, just so we can all remind ourselves how bad not having found in raid was. In all honesty, I'm personally like I don't have much stakes in this, honestly, but I think it would be kind of great.
We gotta try stuff. We gotta try stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, I guess I could dip into another little piece of mine because on the thing that I've proposed, it's exactly that mentality was exactly like one of the core tenets of my thing, which was that we're going to remove finding raid, but we're going to do a half and half. You know, we're going to do a half and half. We're going to try and like keep the progression, but we're going to remove finding raid for like for normal items, but we're going to keep it for quests.
Yeah.
So that players don't just want to leave straight away, but they would for quests, right? But I think that's fine. I think you need the tension for quests somewhere. I don't think removing everything and being able to just like run in, grab a gas analyzer and die and then hand that into therapist. I don't think that that's compelling gameplay. But running in, finding, even if you find something good like a LEDX or whatever, like there's other things to it, right, which stop you going in naked in my proposal. So if you go in and you're just a regular player and you're like normally and stuff, yeah, I'm sure. I mean, was there other stuff that you want to talk about on Tiggs's thing before you jump in? Before we go into mine,
I don't.
Otherwise,
think so.
I'm going to start rambling. Otherwise,
I don't think so. No.
Okay. All right. Fine. We'll let's go from the top then. Let's go from the top. So that was kind of that was one of the big premises, is that lots of the top players are talking about PvP being unsatisfying, which is partly the question we were talking about before, which I think is mainly to do with economics. Like, it's to do with technicalities, but if it's not to do with the technicals of the game, desync and yada yada, and it's also not to do with the economy, then it's like a fundamental flaw with Tarkov that like it can't be resolved. Do you know what I mean? Like, if it's neither of those two things, like
what can't be resolved?
Like if they solve, so just for argument's sake, we just removed all the restrictions or whatever, for better or worse, in all the other
like no found array, no
in all the
flea
other elements of
bans.
the game, right? And people saying, "Oh, PvP now feels really good." Like, yeah, you've got other problems and stuff, but PvP feels really good. And you also get rid of desync and you make the audio really good and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Like, is that if that isn't, it's kind of what we were saying before. If that isn't enough to make PvP good, like PvP is economically profitable and also, and players are not leaving the raid. Like, is that enough to fix the game? If it isn't, then nothing you do can help, and all the desync and stuff is fixed.
Well,
like if none of those things fix it, then you can't help the game. Like, it's got a fundamental problem because of the game structure, because you get to a final point and the game finishes, right? That's part of the way Tarkov is.
That's my
can't do any more.
Premise is that the problem is not that PvP is not rewardable. The problem is you are trying to like force something onto it that it's fundamentally not. You know what I mean? Like, yes, I can do PvP and try to raise the intensity and watch the number go up, I guess. But it's not like you're never going to get back that same feeling of, oh my God, I really need this. You know what I mean? Unless you change the fundamentals of the game where you do constantly need to do stuff. You know what I mean? You essentially make the game more challenging.
Yeah, and there's other elements to this, like the trader loot pool rework and stuff. But that's kind of like, I almost feel like that's kind of out. Like, it's everything's connected, so it's relevant, but it's still like, if you bring in too many elements, you can't fix anything.
Yeah, that's true.
So, okay, so let's just come back to like the base stuff within my system, and then you can tear it apart.
Okay.
So we're saying, like, the fundamental principles here is that we're saying having everything open on the flea market is bad, because at the end, the early wipe ends almost instantaneously, which we've seen before. This is true. It does. We're also, as a sort of an ancillary point, saying that doing that is not necessarily good for the casual player base. It depends on your definition of casuals and new players and yada yada. But I just don't believe that the vast majority of like new people picking up the game benefit from those mechanics in a way that they can have the fun that everybody talks about as an experienced player looking down upon all the new people and being like, oh, these guys are going to have so much fun now. They can buy class 5 and M61, whereas they're actually going to be crawling around the map with an MP5 and just get slapped by someone wearing a fast MT with a face shield that they bought off the Flea. So,
okay, so specifically do players in that case
for that particular piece, yeah.
Okay.
So you somehow finding raid basically incentivizes people to leave early, because whenever they find anything good, they just want to get out, because if they die, like even with it in the secure container, then they're not really going to make much from it. Like, yeah, you can sell it to the traders, but like the profit potential is much lower.
Yeah, it's a nerf for sure.
Yeah. PvP is also unsatisfying because by extending the early game with finding raid and also doing the bans on the flea market, you now, like, taking player loot is basically pointless, because partly because you can buy all that stuff yourself, but also partly because the values are just so bad. You can't sell it to players now, and so you have to sell it to traders at like whatever ridiculous value. It's like, it's something's tiny, right? It's like 40-50%. Like, it's so bad, and it just feels awful selling like a Redoute for like 65k or something to the traders. You think like, man, this sucks. But what Finding Raid does fix is these hatchlings. It forces you to, because they can't just die with the stuff in their container and make like loads of money. They can still do it, but they can't make loads of money. So
as an example, LedX was like $1 million plus. Now it's like 100,000 rubles. So it's depending on how you slice it, you could argue using it for barters, which effectively would be $1 million or whatever Lexes are going for. But
but it's like, exactly, that's like a niche case, and Finding Raid came in and hatchlings stopped.
Yeah, because they got 90% nerf. It was a massive nerf.
Yeah. So from my perspective, it fixed it. So Finding Raid means that you have to leave the raid with the quest items. It has to be Finding Raid, which is a good thing. And trader items got blocked from resale because they're not Finding Raid, which is a good thing, because that stops people bypassing the early game by leveling all the way up to tier 4 traders and then selling BP back on the Flea down to the lower people, because it's just like that just completely bypasses the whole trader system. Like, whether you agree with the trader system or not, that's the system. I'm taking the trader system right now as like a base core pillar. As much as I would like it to change, if we introduce like changing that as well, it's just too much for the moment.
Okay.
But as we said, people have to leave the raid when they find basically anything.
Right.
Which kind of sucks, and PvP sort of sucks. Because you can't sell any of their stuff. And like, so you just leave all their kit in the raid and you just go and find, wires and CPUs. Like you fight somebody and you're like half kitted. Maybe you'll take a rig because you can just pack their stuff inside and it's like a free space. But most of the time people don't take, like, you take the attachments off the AK, you leave the gun, you leave like a lot of like, bad rigs or whatever. Like, it depends on what it is, but lots of stuff you just leave in the raid. So the way that I wanted to kind of resolve all of this was by basically getting rid of Finding Raid and just applying it to quests only, because and importantly, keeping the Flea restrictions. Right, that's the thing. So you still can't sell class 5 armors on the Flea. So you couldn't, you can't just like buy your way through the progression. But it also means that you can sell player gear that's not banned. So class 4s, you could sell ammo that's not banned. You could sell armor that isn't banned, helmets, rigs, guns, and basically any attachment in the game. You could sell those. And that would make PvP feel a lot better. Like, you'd feel like you want to take a gun, because a gun is then like a storage of attachments, I guess, right? It's like there's a lot more value for a gun when the attachments are actually worth something, as well as the weapon itself, right, which you could potentially sell. But none of that stuff that's banned on the Flea, you're able to resell. But this opens up like a bunch of other things. And PvP is still not satisfying at the top level, because if they've got a meta gun, it's going to be one of the restricted guns, so you can't do that. So that was why I wanted to introduce increasing the trader repurchase prices for those weapons. You can't sell them to players anyway, so you may as well just get the traders to pay more for them. Like, it makes sense. These things are top end pieces of kit. There's an immersion aspect as well as just a gameplay value. It's like, someone has a meta SR. Okay, you can sell the attachments on the Flea, but the SR you can sell to the traders for like 80% of its value. You can't sell it to players. Like, yeah, you could use it, sure, and it's still.
You're just saying give essentially buff player loot to traders, which
buff player loot, and you could also do something with dog tags if you wanted to. Like, it doesn't, it's not necessary to do that,
right?
But you could, right? So you're basically just increasing the value of player kit when you kill someone in PvP to incentivize people to take the player kits more so than the loot. And this is a rebalancing, right? It's not like I'm saying PvP
Right.
needs to be better than looting the map. Like, that's not it. Right now, PvP is not better than looting the map. You're
Yeah.
better off sneaking around, hearing somebody, lying in a bush, waiting for them to go past, then walking on, looting 5 stashes, and leaving the game. Like, it's not a compelling
You
game loop. I think the game's
could,
better.
I mean, you could kill them in hopes that they have also looted, but you're gambling, which to me plays into the fact of extract camping is very profitable because they're going to the extract. They probably have loot on them. Like, it's kind of a no-brainer, right? So
Yeah. So there's
sorry.
that. No, that's fine. That's fine. So yeah, so there's still no endgame gear on the Flea using this kind of adjusted system. The early wipe still stays with decent pacing because you still need to level your traders. You can't just buy like super good stuff until you reach them. Players stay in raid for a bit longer because they can put something in their secure container now and actually sell it when they leave, which is that's probably like one of the most controversial things about this. And PvP is more satisfying because player gear actually like makes money now when you leave, or at least makes like something similar to what it would be when you purchase it. You know,
Right. You're
and you
trying to bring it
attachments
in
and blah, blah, blah.
line, you know.
I'm trying to bring it in line so
a
it makes
little-
more.
right.
So both are viable. That's the point. I'm not trying to
Right.
like make the Chads win. I'm not trying to do anything like that.
Yeah.
I want all the viable playstyles to all be viable. I want all the playstyles to be viable.
Mhm.
That's the idea.
But what's the more controversial thing?
The fact that you can sell items on the Flea that got in your secure even if you died, because I've removed
Okay.
find and raid. So
Yeah.
if you find a Lennox, you can sell it on the Flea, even if you die. Obviously, the main problem with this, right, is that you need to fix hatchlings because you bring back the problem with hatchlings with that, which is one of the like. So basically, this covers off like most of the points that I wanted to fix, and there's 3 patches. Patch number 1 is you have to have scavs guarding high tier loot. They have to be there at the beginning of the game. You have to have scavs in resort, like all the entrances. Like you could do it in some particular way that it makes sense, so that it's not like risk free to go in straight away. Because that's the problem with hatchlings right now. You can run, you can use the key, open the door. You've used an SH6. You don't weigh anything. You grab the stuff and you just like run out. Even without even in the existing system, honestly, like you can get there before other people because you don't weigh anything. Yada yada. But like there should be some deterrent for the high value loot spots. And there was a really cool post from somebody. I hope he comes back to me actually. He wrote like loads of stuff about why that's not necessarily good because you like give away where the high tier loot is and that kind of thing. And I was like, well, I think it just needs to be a lot more general, right? I think it just needs to be way more generalized. It's like, yeah, they should be at the entrances to the resort. They should be in dorms. You know, you don't necessarily. They shouldn't be like outside the room, right? If there's good loot in it, right? That's not what I'm saying. They need to be in the area and have the ability to like spot a hatchling who's running in with no cares in the world. Like if you can stealth your way in and get the loot, like fine, right? You give other players the chance to catch up then as well, in theory.
Mhm.
So there's the pros and cons to it. But there needs to be some deterrent. Like I actually don't even really care if it's scavs or not. But you need some deterrent, and scavs are the easiest, most obvious one. In the new updates that we should be getting, it should technically be possible to have more AI on the map based on what BSG have said. Whether you believe it or not is up to you. But it should be possible. So I don't see there shouldn't be any technological reason why that's not the case. The second part is removing finding raid means you then no longer have to survive with quest items. I basically just wanted to reapply finding raid just to quest items themselves. Just call it something else. It can just be finding raid, but it applies to it applies to all items, but it only is valid when you're handing stuff in for quests. It's just called quest eligible. So if you die with something and you're secure, you can still sell it on the Flea. But you can't hand it in for a quest. You know, if it's a gas analyzer, can't hand it in because it is just the finding raid system. So you get it either from the raid, you've crafted it in the hideout, or what's the other route? A quest reward. So you keep the system the same as it is now, but you just make it only applicable for quests. That stops people from buying their way through the quest. Then the final one you have is the not for resale flag.
Yeah.
This basically occurs, there's a little bit of a flowchart for it, but this occurs when you buy something from the traders. Somebody did actually ask a really interesting one, which I haven't decided whether yes or no to it yet, which was, would that apply to purchases from the Flea like it does in the normal find and raid system? I don't know. I haven't decided. And I didn't think about that, which is why it was important to get a lot of feedback.
Oh, wow.
But
yeah, that's
exactly. But like buying from the trader, at least, it flags it with not for resale. It's flagged for not for resale, so you can't put it back on the flea market at all. And there's also like a law element to that, right? Like you can't buy stuff from the traders and like undercut them on the flea or whatever. You have to like find the stuff
Maybe,
you're gonna, if you got it from them directly, like they're gonna kneecap you or whatever. Like I mean, I'm sort of hand waving.
lore.
Yeah, I'm like hand waving, fan luring it into the side as
Yeah.
well. But it's like it's an added benefit. So that applies to you. It never goes away. If you die, you get it back in insurance.
Right.
It still has not for resale. If you give it to a team, so it applies to all your teammates too. If they get it, the item from you, or they pick it up or whatever, it's still not eligible for resale. Like, the only way you could do it is stream sniping each other into the same raid, picking up each other's loot and extracting it. Like, A, is anybody going to be bothered to do that? I don't know, maybe. B, it's also very hard to do that now because the server's aggregated. So it's very difficult to actually get into. You can't just like pick, Montenegro or whatever, and like both specifically go onto one server and queue at the same time. It's like in the dead of night. Like, it's hard to do that now, because I mean, maybe in some places in the world you would be able to do it. I'm not sure, but for the most part, people aren't going to be bothered, right? Because you still have to extract. So it's just going to be a pain to do that, and you still can't sell stuff that's Flea banned. So it's not like you can sell the crazy items on the Flea. I guess that's the thing. That's why you would need. Well, would you need to do that? I'm thinking, like, if you bought a LEDX from the Flea, someone could cheese it by transferring it with another person, and then you could but then what would be the point of that? Anyway, I'm just trying to think on the fly. So I don't know whether, I think, like, if you say, if it's bought off the Flea, then not for resale applies, is the safest way. I'm not sure what the collateral damage is for that. But anyway, if you put all of these things together, keeping the Flea restrictions, getting rid of finding raid, increasing the trader values for banned items only, maybe increasing the PvP dog tag value, Scavs guarding high tier loot. I missed something out actually. So adding a secure container like input
animation.
So some people are talking about like lock the container completely, which I was on board with previously. But that falls into exactly the same problem. It's actually even worse than finding raid, because finding raid, you can put it in your secure, and if you die, you can send it to the trader. If you lock the secure container, you can't put anything in it at all. So that actually incentivizes people even more to leave raids, which was a problem that we were trying to fix. That's that, right? So we've got Scavs guarding the high tier loot. more like the entering the secure container delay with an audio queue to cut. It's like another hatch thing prevention thing. Make finding raid now only eligible for quests, not being able to resell stuff from the traders, and adding all these things together. It kind of like, it ticks all of the various boxes that I think need to be solved to be a viable system, based on a few assumptions, of course. So there you go. Fire away, Church.
All right. Let's tear this puppy down. All right. So why do players leave raids? Question. Why do players leave raids?
Because they find their quest item. Because they've killed somebody and they take their gear and they leave. Oh, because they need to survive with it to complete the quest.
They need to survive. Survival matters.
Yes, it does.
So in some ways, I think, jumping back to the landmark thing, perhaps maybe they want survival to not matter. That way people fight more. Because even in the pre-Found and Raid meta, when we had LEDXs up our butts, we were still willing to fight because survival didn't matter. So I don't know if the issue is we need to make survival not matter, because I think you just sort of, the game is no longer a survival game. You know what I mean? It's like, why are we, what are we trying to accomplish here? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So this is particularly about the ability to sell items upon death in secure, right? In particular,
it applies to that, but even as a whole, I would say holistically.
Well, I have answers for like the specific secure container thing, but like, but generally speaking, survival does matter, and survival should matter most of the time. And I do think it's something that we should strive towards if possible. So that's why I still think that quests should require survival.
Of course, because it would be kind of defeat the purpose if they didn't.
Been there before, and it's stupid, right? You just buy through them and it's silly. Like, what? I mean, the only thing that matters, like, if you let's say you don't survive, what matters then? Okay, well, if you had a locked secure container, then you lose everything. Fine, except maybe insurance.
And except what's in the container.
If you locked it, sorry, I was saying. So if you lock the container, so you couldn't put anything in it
Yeah.
in raid, you can only take things out.
But whatever you
Death.
brought in that was in a container, you would keep.
Yeah,
Is
oh
what I'm
yeah,
saying.
everything you brought in, you get to keep. Sure. Fine in raid then means that you get to keep some of the items, but they're only useful in the hideout or for selling to the vendor. So survival, thing is, you lose your whole kit, right? So survival still matters, but there's a counter mechanic there where a little bit of the survival didn't matter. Then if you take away the find and raid completely, so you can sell stuff on the Flea, for the items that you take out, survival didn't matter. This is true. I'm not sure if it's a big enough game breaker to rule it out. You know, like how bad actually is that? Will that cause players to act in odd ways? Yes, if they can just run to the loot and put it in their butt.
Right.
They can't do that if you block them from doing that. Will that cause the players to do anything different to what we want them to be doing, or at least like the styles that people like to play? Like, will that cause them to do weird stuff that they don't like to do? I don't think so. If you deal with hatchlings, all I think it does is it allows casual players to retain a bit of the extra loot that they retain in raid and make a bit more money. Like the finding raid system that we have right now still allows you to make money when you die. This just increases that by a little bit, so everyone has a little bit more money.
A little bit.
Well, it depends, right? Like,
yeah. This is the thing. Is there?
What situations are you thinking about? You say a little bit there, right? So, like, what situations are you thinking about where it's atrocious and doesn't function? I'm genuinely interested.
Well, because it's on a sliding scale, right?
Yeah.
There are cases, no found and raid. There are cases where you break even. You only lost 98% of your kit's total value. There are some cases where you profited. You made 1%. You made 5% more. You made 100% more, 1,000% more. It's a whole sliding scale when you have no restrictions, right?
And those situations are particularly you went in geared like a normal player. You went to resort and you killed the scavs that are in that location. You went in the raid and you found a LEDX. You put it in your secure container with the animation. Someone comes in and kills you. You get to keep that on the Flea and sell it, but you had a budget kit, so you make a ton of cash.
Hang on. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, right? Because you could go in. I could go in naked, not loot anything, and I lost money, right? Whether I put in my container or not, and I died.
I don't know I'm not sure what you mean. How did you lose money if you went in naked?
Because I died, right? Like you pay a fee to the trader. Okay, well,
the healing fee or whatever.
For simplicity's sake, we'll say I'm at 0%, right? But if I brought him a pistol and I died and looted nothing, I lost money, right? But if I picked up a mag and put in my container, I only lost 98% of my kit, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I picked up a can of beans, I made 1% net worth when I died. You get what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter what you bring in. It does, but it also matters what you bring out via death. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's on a sliding scale. It doesn't matter if you're a hatchet runner, if you have a pistol, if you have a grenade. You can be in all these ranges of percentages of your net output. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Sort of. You could be in the negative because you looted some things in your butt. You didn't profit from your death, but you made back some money. Like maybe half your kit. You could lose your entire kit and lose everything. You could have looted a LEDX and sold it for $1 million, and you made 500% of your kit. You know what I mean? That all of the it's like endless possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's contingent on what those things sell for to players.
Indeed,
of course. Does that make sense?
Why is that? Like, is that necessarily so bad?
Well, this is the thing I was trying to say is it's like there's a good side to it, right? Like on the good side, like you and I would probably agree that we want to be in the range where people are, not necessarily profiting off their deaths, right? Like the good-hearted side of the secure container is like, you know what? You failed, but it's okay. You did do this little thing, and you got a little bit of a reward, right? The dark side is, I just made 10 million rubles on interchange going in naked every raid. The dark side is I'm minimizing my input and maximizing my output, and because of the nature of like Tarkov's economy being like kind of hyperinflated in my opinion. Um, the millions of rubles, you can just make insane money, right? And there's gonna be those players that will do that. So if you in the current state where we do have found and raid, there are some players that will hatchet run. For them, it's worth it. I think when the range is so extreme, like right now, I think the range is a lot smaller. Like it's a lot harder to make. You can kind of come up with those very niche cases where it's like I got a Lytics in my butt, I can use it towards the barter for the thick case. That's effectively worth $1 million. But the range has been extremely crunched down. Even since Found and Raid, I've still seen hatchet runners and killed. I've hatchet run for science, of course, but it's like there will still be people that do this thing, but it's okay because it's not the meta way. Is kind of where I'm at. I think most of the people are satisfied with the Found and Raid in regards to hatchet run, because not everyone is hatchet run. I shouldn't say everyone, but it's not the mass majority.
Yeah, exactly. You don't see it all the time.
Yeah.
Let me pose you a question then.
Okay.
Hypothetically speaking, if you can do, like, I'm not saying that my hatchet running solution is perfect.
Okay.
If you can deal with players running in naked or like extremely undergeared in some fashion to prevent them from running in, grabbing high value items and stuff, does then the ability to resell stuff on the Flea specifically out of the secure container matter that much? Like, I understand. I know where you're coming from, right? Because like some people will be incentivized. They'll take the minimum viable kit to go in and kill the 2 scavs and go and grab the item or whatever, right? And they'll be there before people, and 10 seconds on the skill won't matter, and then they'll die, and then it won't. There'll be some people who min max it, and it kind of regardless of what you do, unless you make it really some really serious system. I don't know. There's probably a way of doing it, to be honest, but you will be buffing hatchet running in some fashion by making these changes. Is that kind of like that's true? That's true to an extent.
Yeah, I mean, well, for going over to your specific changes, I mean, it's really fun thinking about this now because I basically, being Arc Smitter, like when I talked to Arc Smitter, I was basically on your position and he was on my position. I was like, surely there's some way, but and there might be, but essentially it's like a half measure, right? So if you put the scavs there to guard it, you sort of just like raise the minimum on the input,
You do, and I had this argument from somebody else saying like, oh, if you go into raid without armor, without gear, without weapon or whatever, then you should get really punished if you die. And I'm like, well, that just raises the minimum. It's like tagged and cursed. That just raises the minimum bar for entry into the raid.
Yeah.
But I feel like if you have like 2 scavs there or whatever, like, and the secure container mechanic, so that other players like maybe have the potential to like catch up with you or something, you have to like fire your gun. If you want to bring a suppressor, that's another thing. I feel like you're actually engaging with the game, at least. Like, you have to kill the 2 scavs with like a super limited kit. Like, okay, fine. Now you've given your position away because you've got a Makarov. Like, it's like, I don't know. I feel like I feel like it's different to just like saying, oh, we're just going to raise the bar of entry. Like, you have to come in with 100K's worth of loot. Like, then people will just come in with 100K's worth of crappy stuff. They'll insure it, drop it on the floor. Like, there's a meta way around that. Whereas like this way, like, there's a deterrent that you have to deal with. You have to give yourself away. It's not necessarily as easy just to stuff the stuff in. You have to decide whether to keep it on you and run and then put it in somewhere else. You still make the sound, you might get caught.
Okay, so in a hypothetical situation, if you did make it essentially more challenging for them to do this, would that be enough for the deterrent? Would it be fine? Would it be enough?
Is it enough because I will admit I'm accepting it even though I don't like it. Let's put it that way. I think it's just like, I can't see any way out other than this. It's the one big compromise that I make in the whole thing, and I can't see any other way to fix it other than just tightening down the hatchling thing super hard with whatever, right? Like, high value loot only spawns after 10 minutes or 5 minutes or randomly between 5 and 10 minutes, or the rooms are locked for the first whatever. Like, I don't know, something. There's something there that allows you to stop people just running in at the start. Like, the thing is, the whole of Tarkov screwed up because of something that somebody else pointed out, which is all the spawns happen. We all spawn in at the same time. We all run in. Well, it's just like, it's ridiculous, right? It needs to be like the cycle or something with randomly respawning loot, although I guess that maybe hatch things could work in that system too. And I don't know. Now I'm just ranting. Let me stop.
I mean, hypothetically, if you could create that scenario where, you challenge the hatchet runner essentially. Whether it's raising the bar or they got to play some, mini game or something, would that be enough of a deterrent? I can't say for certain. I'm leaning towards no, simply because the values of the economy is ridiculous. Like the LEDX, the graphics cards. I don't know I don't know, because you're essentially doing low risk gameplay for high reward. So you make high risk gameplay high reward, not like meaningful, and low risk gameplay low reward, not meaningful. So I think the metagame of the metagame would be, what is the bare minimum I can bring in to maximize my profits, aka Hunter Vepr M61, Mosin Man, because you could still put in whatever you find in your butt, you still make a profit. Everyone's economy gets boosted naturally. The economy, there's more money inflating, so things are more expensive. So they kind of scale with the items they're taking out in their containers and dying with, right? Like the LEDX has become more expensive because there's more money floating around, because people are just kind of, not losing money on average as much. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, there's other ways to deal with that, right? Like by just decreasing the loot pool overall for all items and things. Like you
Sure.
can make player base poorer like that. But yeah, it's tricky. It's a really tough one. I'm not sure. Like if you deal with the hatchlings problem, which is a big if, I just feel that the emergent gameplay of the rest of the player base isn't worse off necessarily for it, right? Like there are situations I said where you go in mid geared and you find the thing, you stuff it in your button and you die, and then you just make 1 million rubles for no reason, even though you had a mid tier AK or whatever, just because no one else wanted to go to resort that raid. Like those situations will happen. But I mean, in the current system, you still make 100k. Like I know that the scale's different, but does one dude making 1 mil this time, does it make that much difference? Like if you tweak the loot pools or make it slightly rarer to account for it, or I don't know.
This is the thing. You say, does it make that much difference to the emerging gameplay? I mean, if you're tweaking loot pools for hatchlings, then what about the people who are not hatchlings? Like they're affected by, even the people that are not trying to be hatchlings. Now they have to fight scavs to get to these rooms. Like it affects everyone equally.
Yeah, this is true, but they're also making more money from the random items that they have when they die, that they've got secured too. Not necessarily just the high value ones, but
sure,
they're now not just got to loot hideout only items in the secure. They can now take whatever and put it in and sell it. If they find I don't know, something that what sells for a lot on the Flea, but it's kind of useless to most people.
wires.
I think
10K
maybe wires, just stuff like that, or syringes. Maybe there's a barter for that. But
sure,
if you don't want to do the barter, it's 20. Yeah, it's 30k, 26k on the Flea.
Yeah.
But if you sell it to therapists, it's 5k. Stuff like that. And I'm just not sure. I'm not sure whether the principle of it, whether we should die on that hill.
I think so, because if you have enough wiggle room for the majority, I mean, right now there's probably a small percentage, extremely small, but which I think is fine. There's probably a number that's acceptable. But if you if it's the majority, I think you just break the game, because you basically, survival is optional. You can max. I mean, you're still affected. Obviously, there's going to be times where you can't get to the, I run the LEDX. There is no thing there. I don't get the loot, whatever. Even if I'm naked, geared, whatever. Like in the bubble, the idea of I don't want to punish players 100%. I want them to be rewarded, 20% for the work that they put in. I love that idea. But I think the problem arises when they're able to go beyond 100% and 101%. It's not ideal, but it's okay. But the 1,000%, reward for dying, I just think it breaks the game. And this is why I say I don't think Beaster can do it for a different reason, but I'm okay going back to that, because I I think it really was such a. I mean, it was so long ago, dude. That's what, 3 years ago?
Something like that, yeah.
It was so long ago. So, because a lot of people were kind of advocating for not found in raid. I think you can do not found in raid, but this is the thing I'll say is, I think what you're trying to do specifically on the container, Similar to what I've done, is not something that's very elegant in design. Do you know what I mean? Like there's
Mm.
some things that are just like it's like you got to have all these rules and conditions for a lot of things, and you get this really long list. And that's kind of like the issue with Found and Raid, right? When you have something elegant, it just kind of like works like this freaking coffee mug, right? It's like, why don't you have just a little ring or some other weird shape for people to hold their fingers? Well, maybe some people don't have fingers. Like it's just what I mean, it makes sense. It's got a bunch of different ways you can grip it. I can hold like this. I can hold like this. It's just it's right. You know what I mean? It doesn't have like all these rules and stipulations for people with missing indexes or giant, monstrous hands or little tiny baby hands. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. It's a big problem.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I just don't really know how else you fix it. Is the problem.
I'd still. I mean, I don't think they're gonna do it, but I still think locking it would be. I would be fine if you could lock it and you could put more stuff in there. Like if I could bring, um, 6 stacks of ammo in there. Plus, like if you doubled the container sizes, fuck it, dude. Who cares? You know what I mean? But like, at least people aren't doing, like survival still matters, but they're not getting massively punished. You know what I mean? Like if I could bring in a grizzly serve, all the keys, 6 stacks of ammo, bucket grenades. You know what I mean? Like just remove the ability to use it. Like you have to drag it out. Like it's basically a one way out. If you want to use it, you got to drag it out, right?
Yeah.
And there you go. Like if you have to use it, then it's like emergency, but you don't. I don't know.
Are you in the
I think
camp of
that's the
like?
simplest way.
Are you in the camp of not being able to use stims inside the locked container?
Yeah, I think that's kind of busted as well. It's
Yeah.
dude, the stuff they've done with adding like the boxes inside of boxes. Like for me personally, dude, looting resort with the contain the stems. I back when it was 4x4, even now I still do it when I did play, but I would leave empty slots for stems because dude, some of these
Yeah.
stems are like 100k.
Mm-hmm,
It's like, I mean, if you want, you could bring in more stems, and there is value there. But like, why not just generate a better ratio for when I die? You know what I mean? Like, if I'm
yeah.
only losing 1/3 of my kit, that's just kind of like a no brainer to me. So,
And there's stims you might want as well, right? ETGs and stuff that you keep. You're going to use
and
them.
then I
So
could use it, and it's like, you know
yeah.
what I mean? It's kind of a win-win. So
Yeah. I think the only issue for me with the whole like locking the secure container is it comes back to just like one of those fundamental principles, which like is an arguable thing, but just that if people are unable to put stuff into their container whatsoever, it just means that people want to leave them out earlier. And it
yeah,
just makes it's the thing is it's not for everybody, right? Like some people prefer to have quieter raids or whatever. If you're kind of like the looter quester, like more casual type player, then that's kind of fine for you, just like trundle around, do your quests and stuff. But it is like I do think it is a nerf to PvP in general, and I think PvP is nerfed quite a bit anyway. And I mean, maybe it is fine. It just makes it like even worse than it is now. With people like actually like before now, like
yeah.
right
I
now you
mean,
get a bit, whereas like in this new system now you get nothing. Like it's actually even more of a nerf um on on the container and on people's willingness to kind of like stay in the raid or whatever.
sure. I would say that PvP is like optional in Tarkov, regardless of
Yeah,
what state it's in. So,
this is true.
like to me, it's like it. Sure, it would be unfortunate, but you could buff PvP by other ways. Like if you want people to stay in the raid longer, airdrops are great, right? Can we spawn boss? Like what can we do to incentivize people to stay in the raid more? Past 30 minutes, the goons spawn and start roaming the map or whatever. Like I'm sure there's ways you could do within the raid time base framework to incentivize people to stay in a raid and contest over an objective. Is what I'm getting at, because to me that's the core of Tarkov, is having the intensity. So when you remove like the big appeal of it and the intensity is just about PvP, it's okay, but it's not as good as I think the more intense parts. Like the hyper
Yeah.
intensive.
I guess that's the thing, right? There are, you need events and other stuff to make like the end game actually interesting and fun, and like have these things like dynamic elements on the map that are good to incentivize people to stay, and that helps for sure. It definitely helps for sure, but I don't know. I'm not sure if it fixes all of the issues.
But this is the other thing too, is that if money is meaningless, then that also has to matter. Like resources have to matter. You know what I mean? Like you can't have it both ways, which is kind of the issue with Landmark's statement. Is like he basically wants it both ways. It's like you want to make money off killing people. At the same time, you want people to stay and fight to make money. But it's like you have infinite resources. You know what I mean? It's like not everyone may have infinite resources. So making them fight more to potentially lose resources doesn't really help. You know what I mean? Like you would then have to, and that's why maybe some people legitimately want secure container back, is because you do have the sort of like, well, I know for sure Pestily and General Sam want it back, and it's a legitimate argument. I mean, I think it's busted, but truthfully, you have those moments where it's like, yeah, I'm profiting off this death. It does, like, survival would be nice, but I could just roll the dice and fight. It's okay either way.
It introduces an element of that into the game that doesn't exist right now, like more of that into the game.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a compromise you have to take, basically, on the integrity of your survival focus versus other elements. It's true. It's a trade-off. This is true. That's why I said it was the most controversial element of the entire structure that I was looking at, because it is, right? Like it's something that feels like you don't want to have happen. Like it just, and that's why I've been like very focused on trying to be like, is it that bad? Like, how can we mitigate it? Like, are there any mechanisms that we can use to make all the other stuff work and make this okay? That's the thing, right? That's what I've been focused on, trying to figure out that stuff. And yeah, there might be other ways to make it work, but I think it's just like it comes down to a question of like whether you're willing to sacrifice that survival focused integrity versus other elements like incentivizing players to stay in the raid more. I mean, hell, who knows, right? Like maybe even just increasing the trader value for banned items is enough. But I don't know.
Yeah.
maybe allowing player gear to be fine in raids for like, I guess, like, just allowing, if you just suddenly allowed like all player gear to be fine in raid, I mean, then but actually, no, you can't buy banned ammo, right? Like, yeah, I don't know. This is the thing.
Well,
like, if you retagged everybody's kit with find in raid as they entered into the game, what would that do?
Well, let me say this, because that brings to my other point, is it is my personal belief that find in raid was also brought about to combat RMT. Like it was sort of like their multifaceted solution. I don't have any proof of this. I could have swore Nikita mentioned this, but I couldn't find anything. I looked for it a long time ago. But think, back in the day before Found in Raid, what you could do is you could go into Raid, you could drop items, and you could pick it up, and then you could sell it on the flea market. So if I'm an RNTer and I'm going to give you a Red Labs key card, I could sell it through the flea market to you, but how are you going to buy it with the rubles? You don't have rubles. You want rubles. So I'm going to give you the red key card, and then you can put on the flea market for 10 million rubles, and I'll buy it from you because I'm an RMTer, I'm a cheater, I got infinite money. So I think you run into a little bit of that issue. Again, you would have to do a lot of like caveat rules. You know what I mean? Like if you're on the same team, you can't, it's can't be sold in the flea market if it's looted from a player. There could be some things to combat that, but that's why I think it's unlikely BSG will remove Found in Raid without something that kind of counters that as well.
Yeah. It's complicated. Thing is, though, all of this has done what I would hope it did, which is sparked a lot of discussion and actually putting a framework in, because like each individual line going like trader loot needs to be rebalanced versus stuff in raid, like oh, we need to fix the early wipe. The weight system is garbage. It needs to be removed. Like all of these individual single liners, I just feel at this point they're just not helpful. Like coming
What
up
do
with
you
just a
mean?
random list. Just like I just feel like everybody who's come up with like random lists
Oh,
of
you mean
stuff
having a
being
more
like,
cohesive,
I
like
just think it's
all encompassing
necessary.
thing? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Even if it's not the right answer, right? You
Sure.
need to fit it into the framework of how this affects everything else, because that's the problem with Tarkov, and that's what we accuse BSG of when they make stupid changes. Is they
Yeah.
change this one thing and it breaks something over here on planet Jupiter because it's like the connections are all this. They change one barter, but because these two things are linked together, fuel's free now, and it's like, oh my god, why didn't they think of this? But then the player base is obsessed with basically putting out just like, oh, fix this thing and then fix this thing and fix this thing without thinking like, okay, well, how do you actually go and do that? But I mean, it's not our job, right? We're not game designers. In fairness, it's
Yeah.
BSG's job to do that. And we put the complaints up and say, okay, well, this is the problem. This is the problem. It's up to them to fix it. But again, I think it's important for the players who play all the time to think in this way if we want something to be done, because like BSG don't necessarily know, and they've shown that by the changes that they make sometimes, right? They don't think of all of the collateral damage from things because they don't air feedback out like this. They don't go with a proposal set of changes, make a YouTube video, read every single comment, and then incorporate that back into the original design. It's something that they don't do. Like, yeah, maybe they put some stuff out on ETS. Does that even work? Like, clearly not, because things have come to the main branch of the game that have been in a busted state. So, I don't know. I feel like someone's got to do it.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, BSG, I do feel like they'd probably do a similar process, but it's all internal. Because for the most part, Found and Raid did what it set out to do pretty well, I think, for the most part. I don't think there was, I mean, the only like iterations we've seen thus far have been flea market bans, which you could argue is like a separate thing, but it's probably still attached to this whole Found and Raid, because Found and Raid is naturally just like a restriction, right? So it's essentially more restrictions on the flea. Even though Found and Raid affects things like quests and whatnot. Okay, I have a few other things. I hope I'm not like being too intense here.
Go for it. Intensity is what we need. I'm happy.
So one thing to note, I think is important to note, from 12.6 to 12.10, there was no scav karma, and this was still during the not the first flea market, but the Found and Raid system, I believe.
Yeah, 12.6 was Find and Raid.
And I think once we got scav karma, because the way things have played out, there's been a small resurgence of money into the economy from, again, low risk, high reward. Like me personally, I would prefer if scav loot was like marked as not found in raid, which I know is like a lot of people are but I feel as though if you want a memes for people to like have a safety net, in my opinion, that would be like a good starting point, because you could loot, you have your gear you could use. Like the worst case scenario for Tarkov is you have no rubles. What do you do? Right? Like assume there's no container, assume there's no PMC. You can't play the game. That's like, I mean, you can, but it's not very engaging, right? So you have scav mode, which is like, oh, I'm still playing a game and I got a gun and I can shoot stuff, I can loot stuff. And you bring it out and you could sell it to the traders, or, I've got a couple of different things, but that would be like my preference. But that aside, I do think scav karma, because everyone's so friendly, and it's just like, there's like compounding things, right? No PMCs in a raid because there's nothing to incentivize them to stay in a raid. Like, who wants to stay in a raid and kill scavs? There are a few people, because you will have quest or like, internal motivations. Like, I hate scav players. There's a funny, Erwin's doing a quest where you have to knife scavs, and he's dressing up like a scav to go assimilate with scavs, pretend to be a scav, and then knife them, which is making for some great content. But he's kind of like, he's like surprised that people aren't suspicious.
Is it like way too easy?
It's because the only really tell is if you analyze his gear, right? Like you have to sit there and analyze his clothing. But like why would any scav not like be untrustworthy of another scav?
Yeah,
Do you
there's
know
no
what I
reason.
mean?
I agree with you. Right?
You're completely incentivized to be. So it's. I think that's a busted system because then you can go in, loot, find, and raid items. Again, the scaling thing. You're getting way more for what you're putting in. I think it's a bit of a problem, and it's easier now than it used to be because of Scav Karma, because Scavs don't shoot you, AI or players. I think it's a bit of a problem. Like it's honestly so frustrating because it's so annoying that this guy is like beating me to loot and like cutting me off, and I simply cannot do anything about it besides going to a different location. It's so fun. It's so infuriating to me.
Do you care that much? I guess so. This almost like comes back to another thing. It's just like, well, if you can go on the streets and just loot like 500k every time, 500, 600k every single raid, it almost makes that, and that's happening like right now.
Yeah, that's absolutely is.
Also makes me think like, does it really affect the game that negatively to have people having the secure container making a mill every now and then from a LEDX? That actually makes me more think like, I don't care, because people are already doing that with Scav. It's basically risk-free anyway. Like, yeah, survival matters, but you're going to always survive like 90% of the time, because most people are incentivized, or like, some people just don't know and they just try to shoot you, or they're scared or whatever, they mistake you. But 90% of the time, you're going to survive, because you're hardly ever going to run into a PMC, especially on the streets, because it's like hard, because there's Scavs everywhere, so they normally give themselves away, and you can just make a ton of money. It's like I'm not sure if making like a ton of money is necessally a problem. I just don't think it's the
well. I don't think making money is a problem. I just think low risk, high reward is a problem because when it, you know what I mean.
That's the same with the Scav, right? That's why you have the issue.
And that's
like Scav is low risk and it's super high reward on the streets. Same thing.
My premise is that's the issue why people say PvP is not rewarding. Like they're like, if you make the game matter, then the game, things become meaningful. You don't have to like look at hyper focus on one specific aspect of a game, part of the game, PvP in this case, to make things matter. You know what I mean?
So I'm Redmont in chat said something interesting. So he says, but why is low risk, high reward a problem? And the reason why it is a problem is because the trader system is set up the way it is, the flea market is set up the way it is, and we're still in the ruble meta despite various issues and stuff, right? Like if you couldn't just buy everything from the traders, it wouldn't matter so much. Like the problem is that everything can be converted into rubles. It all comes back to that issue mainly. Like it wouldn't really, if you could just like, if you're playing hardcore and you just like hatchet ran in and like grabbed a LEDX without finding raids, it's like, okay, you can complete your quest, great, and then like slowly work towards the box or something. But it's, do you know what I mean? Like it doesn't do anything for your character, right? You still have to go and find actual guns. You can't liquidate that and turn it into a fully modded M4 from like Peacekeeper 4. I think that's fundamentally the issue. I think.
Yeah, I would.
Is the game. Solved? Is this all solved by having two characters? A normal character where normal players are playing, and then a hardcore character where all the PvP sweat lords can go, where PvP does matter because every gun is like an insane thing,
That's the argument potentially. Is you have arena, which is the nothing matters, just shoot each other guys, and then you have 1.0 Tarkov, which everything matters. It's hardcore, but I don't know how realistic it is. But I want to ask you something. Is there a poker in the game of poker? Is there a play that's low risk, high reward? Is there such a concept of thing? A strategy?
Not necessarily a strategy. There are moments where that is the case, but if you have pocket aces, right? And you're just like you're in the situation where you're trying to tease out bets from other people, especially pre-flop, before any cards have gone on the board. Your aim really is to, like, if people are willing to go along with it depends on how the game was played, but if people are willing to go along with it, your aim is really to just get everybody all in as soon as you can.
You're bluffing
before the board comes down. Not even bluffing, but just kind of like you can't just obviously
you have a winning, you have the best.
Yeah, you're you pick up pocket aces. Yeah, you pick up pocket aces, and you're just like,
is that like the best?
Yeah, it's the absolute best, right? For a starting hand. But obviously, when you
okay.
Obviously, but like so if you say you're just playing against one other person and you have pocket aces, and you go all in, you both put your cards down on the table, and then it goes first card, second card, third card, fourth card, fifth card, because there's no betting, right? And the chance of you winning against somebody with pocket aces is like astronomical, right? Based on like any random range of hands. It's actually like it's actually worse for them if they have a good hand in many ways, because a lot of the times they'll have like ace queen, ace king, ace jack.
Right, they'll think they'll have a good hand. They're overconfident.
And you've got them. you've got them completely screwed
Yeah.
because you have you have like pocket aces, like they have to get like you've got one of the cards that makes their hand good. So it's like it's actually if they have like pocket kings or something, the
Oh
only way they
wow,
win is by
yeah.
getting another king.
But you
So like
have
if you have
their okay,
yeah,
yeah.
so pocket aces is kind of like the torpedo against all
I
the other good
see.
hands. So that's kind of like one situation where it is low, but you're trying to like tease out as much betting as possible, right? Like you try and make them not just fold. Like you have to act as if you don't have them, but you have something good to make them want to play.
Yeah.
But like whatever, but you don't
But there
really want to.
but in that micro bubble there
Mm.
is still risk because you
There's still
you
risk.
have
You can still
to
lose.
well, not only that, but you have to like convince them as you're saying that you don't have a winning hand because you want them
True.
to bet. So it's like
Yeah, the risk is that they just fold. I'm talking specifically about like cash games or something because that's what I used to play. Which is like there's two different types of
right.
poker. There's the big tournaments that everybody knows and loves. Like you pay some buy-in and then you go and you play through like 1,000,000 people and get to the final table and stuff. But what I used to play was like 6 people sat at the table and they just like you have like you just put some money in front of you and then you just play. So you can just leave whenever. Like that's
Mhm.
what I used to play. Like I highly value leaving whenever I want. You may have noticed this in other things. Like it's one of the reasons why I stopped playing Dota. One of the reasons why I kind of stopped playing PUBG. So why Tarkov I think is cool because you can just play a factory run if you want to, and it's super fast. You're right next to the exits. And I also like playing poker cash games because if you're interrupted or whatever, you can just go right, finish the hand, boof, and off you go. Whereas a tournament, like they can take like freaking out. They can take days, dude. Right? And, like the World Series of Poker, it takes like forever. Can't just like get up and leave. So, well, I get you can for a time. Anyway, we're getting off topic. So yeah, I don't know. It's poker's a very different game though in many ways.
Sure. But I guess to the original question, like is that a bad thing in that context? Like having that like is it, first of all, is it a low risk, high reward like
The risk is
play?
having them fold, I guess. Like early, you're like too aggressive, and then they're just like because most of the time they won't have a good hand. So you bet out and they just fold, and you're like the opportunity was wasted.
But
You
is
want to
there
get
something you can do that's like easy or low efforts, not risky to give you like a high reward?
not really because you're playing against other people.
Hmm.
Right, so it's like it's a mirror. It's a mirror matchup. It's
Okay.
like it's kind of like RTS, right? In many ways, it's like a 1v1
It's not
RTS.
like
There's nothing easy you can do because you're playing against another person. Like they can do the counter. It depends. I mean, if the game's unbalanced, then sure. But like in Tarkov, we're not
mhm.
and hatchet running and stuff. We're not playing against another person. We're playing against the system.
Yeah,
And
we're
there's an
playing.
easy and it's an easy and there's the house is busted in certain
Mhm.
circumstances. So I feel like it's different.
Um. Okay, there's a few more things I want to get off the list real quick. Hmm. Okay, but basically, okay. Now, I really wish they would bring back dynamic traders because I feel like it solves um so many problems. But I don't know, dude. Without going too much into it, um, yeah, I think I genuinely think that if you had dynamic traders, you could have a free flowing economy, and you can't have players flipping stuff, right? Because in the ideal scenario, the trader adjusts its price according to the market, right? Even
Yeah.
its quantity. But I understand that that is not a like you probably need a mathematician to come up with an algorithm of sorts to do that. So that's probably not the easiest task to do. I mean, I was like mulling it over my head, thinking of some conditions, but actually like coding that and having it like building a system within a system and having that microsystem work within the large system, it sounds really difficult. But
Yeah.
uh, and that one, yeah, I don't know. The one final thing I'll say is how does selling items to other players break progression?
It depends on what system you're referring to. Are we talking about selling items that are currently Flea banned?
Um,
Well, let's put it this way: flipping from tier 4 traders onto other players clearly breaks progression because you don't have to participate in the trader leveling
okay,
in order to get that high tier gear. And
for
that's its
sure.
own problem because the high tier gear is only found on the traders for the most part. It's one of the fundamental issues with the game, which I keep coming back to about the loot rebalance, but that's another thing.
Okay. Man, I wish I put like a timestamp or something. I would probably say selling player gear. How does that break? How does selling player gear from other like gear from other players break progression?
I think in the same vein that flipping gear from traders breaks progression,
Because you're
selling the gear
essentially
from the players, because you're essentially doing the
doing the
same
same
thing,
thing.
but via having killed them. So it's slightly better. It's not as bad, but it's in the same ballpark
Why is it not as bad?
because you actually have to kill them. So the
There's a
supply of
challenge to
items
it.
is there's a challenge to it, and the supply of those items is much lower. Like someone has to buy the item, go into raid, die. Someone else has to pick it up, leave the raid, put it on the flea. Like that will happen enough for the flea market just to be completely inundated with that gear, but it's not quite as bad as flipping it.
So then, what's the difference between me killing a player and selling their Alton versus me finding the Alton and selling it
On the flea,
on the flea?
I don't think there is any. Why? Where's the
Then
angle for this question? Because the Alton is flea.
then
In my structure, the Alton is flea banned anyway, so you can't sell it to players.
so let me restate it. So how does player, what's the difference between me selling player gear, an Alton, versus me selling an Alton that I found in a cache? How does one break progression and the other one doesn't? Because I think
I guess
what you're saying is, yeah, go ahead.
I guess like I would say like maybe it depends. That's like the next tier on, which is that, if it's rare enough in the loot pool, you don't see many. And so if that's on the flea, players are still able to skip progression by buying those things. But because they can't be bought in any other way, then like maybe it's potential or something. But that applies to all the other items. If you find a tactech or a ULAC or whatever that you should normally only be able to buy from the traders in the system where we assume traders are the thing, those just aren't on the flea market in any other way. Whereas if you then start allowing people to sell Altins just specifically because it was found in the cache as opposed to on players, like there'll be much lower supply of them, but it's still there'll still be
Well,
enough on the
in the
flea
raid,
market.
doesn't have to be a cache. Like it.
Whatever, yeah, finding raid in some
Okay,
format on a boss or guard or whatever, right?
yeah,
You find it some way,
non-player loot.
and then you sell it on the flea market. Like again, it's probably better, but it just kind of depends. Like depends on what the loot pools are like as to whether it's acceptable. But I still just feel like you don't want to go down that. That you have to like then manage each item like in the economy. You go down a dark path doing it like that by like unbanning items that were found from a non-player source. Because then you have to think about, okay, well, if I find 762 BP, can I put that up now? And can I put up,
Well,
the other
get
various
get
things on
rid
the
of
fleet
flea
that were banned?
bans. Like flea bans don't exist. There is no found in raid. I what I think you're saying is you can't do that because people will sell player gear and that breaks progression. I'm trying to figure out what's the distinction between that and them looting the gear and selling it. When there's no found in raid, there's no bans. Like, how is one breaking progression, the other one's not? Is what I'm trying to figure out.
Well, and I don't understand the question because under my system, you can't sell any of those things. If the ultimate is on the traders, you can't sell it. If it's on the player, you can't sell it. If you find it in the cache, you can't sell it under my
Yeah,
system.
but
So I'm not sure like what the angle is.
well, I'm saying like set your system aside, right?
Yeah.
Like think of the context. There is no found in raid. There is no bans, right?
Yeah. So in that situation, you can flip trader gear, you can sell player gear,
Mm-hmm.
and you can sell stuff you find in raid. In that case, they're all the same. It's just about like how frequent those loot pools are. The trader one is the most frequent. Finding it on players is
Okay.
probably the second most frequent, and finding it in stashes or on guards or whatever. Like, I mean, it may or may not be the third most frequent. Those two will vie for second and third place, depending on how often AI will have the different piece of equipment versus players and blah, blah, blah.
So you're saying it comes down more to a scarcity
Kind of, yeah.
rather than um, where the source is actually coming from.
Yes.
Like, in other words, it's not inherently bad that someone sells player gear on the market, unless
High
that.
tier player gear, I think it still is, just because
Okay.
Just because it allows players who basically have like cracked the code to run whatever kit they like whenever. Ultimately, right? If stuff's up there for money, some people will run that alt in all day long. And I just don't think
Okay.
I don't think any player should have the ability
So
to
the
do
other
that.
thing my bad. So the other thing you're saying, yeah, okay, I see what you're saying. So that's the other part is you're also saying high tier gear should only be accessible through X, Y, and Z, whatever those things are.
Yeah, not
You're
just with
saying
rubles and the Flea whenever.
you're saying the Flea can't have high tier gear
Correct.
because it breaks progression.
Yeah. And also breaks the fact that high level players will just always wear that stuff. That's not necessarily even a progression thing, but it's just like a gear limiting thing.
Well, be careful. There's always those are strong words. So I don't know if that's true or not, but
Right, because what rubles is progression, and then you buy the good kits with rubles, so it's kind of is progression. Is that sort of what you mean?
No, I just mean like the high tier player doesn't equate. I'm always going to buy the highest tier
Not always, but they
available
can.
again.
They can. They have the ability. That's the problem.
Yeah.
It's the ability to do so, not the fact that they do or don't.
The problem is that they have the ability to buy the gear, and thus
And
people
thus
can.
has the potential to run it all the time if they want.
Oh,
And
okay.
and the portion of the player base that will do that.
I see. So the interesting. So you don't have a problem with. So you have a problem with high tier gear being available as long as it's in the raid, is what you're saying. It's okay as
Yeah.
long as it's in the raid.
Yeah, and you find it.
Why? Because you found it? Like why that distinction?
Because you have to go and do the thing. This ultimately comes down to like the fungibility of items. Like, can you sell 1,000 crappy AKs and buy
Right.
an Altin? I think no. I think that an Altin should be its own thing. You should have to go and do something for it. I think the loot pool right now is kind of busted. The fact that it's only in stashes, there's not an interesting way to actually to go and get them. And I do think that's another issue. Honestly, that's like a separate issue that there's not an interesting way to get Altins right now. It's the same thing with all the good ammo, SSAAP, MAIAP, all of those ones. Like you can't get them. There's no interesting way to get them. That's its own problem. But I don't think it should be on the Flea. And I think you have to go and do some work to go and get those things. I don't think you should just be able to transmogrify a bunch of stuff into money and then buy the stuff to buy those things.
You're saying that the 100 AK's work is not you're valuing types of work essentially. You're saying
Kind of, yeah.
that work should not be valued. Like
For
you
this
should
tier,
only
yeah.
have to do this specific type of work.
Yeah, and whether that's like level your traders, whether it's find it in raid, whether it's find it in a stash, whether it's kill bosses and get it from them, like you have to go and engage the game in a different, more specific way than just like loot wires and then buy the things you want.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, yeah, just a different approach there. I mean, I'm in a vacuum. I have no problem with people doing different types of work. I just the cogs have to be balanced, obviously. But
Yeah.
Okay.
Indeed.
I think that's enough.
It's a big one. It's surely a big one. And there's so much more to it, as we're saying, right? We're talking about like this loot pools thing is something that keeps coming up over and over and over again. I think maybe I need to spend a bit more time thinking about that.
Yeah, let me pitch a quick pitch. Like, what do you think about max level traders? Tier 3 armor. Like, sorry, you have like 1 or 2 tier 4 armors, max level traders.
At most, like no class 5s.
No class 5s. Like I'm talking the crappy toilet paper armor and maybe like a rat rig.
A hack or something, yeah. I think that is fine, so long as the loot pools in raid are balanced. And that's the problem, right? You need to rebalance the traders.
Yeah.
So that and the in raid loot, so that it's feasible to go and get a class 5 and 6 sometimes from bosses or whatever. Like I think the traders sell way too much stuff. Like I know that Jesse's spoken about this like a bunch of times.
Yeah.
Like rebalancing the stuff
so
in raid, and I completely agree with them, right? Like it does a lot of stuff. It means that people have to go and participate in the game to go and do the things, and not just like, because I've talked mostly about just assuming the trader system is the way that it is. But I do just feel that the trader system itself is flawed and that more stuff needs to be in raid, because right now the game's really gated. You know, like I found a Tasmanian tiger rig really early on, either last wipe or this wipe. I can't remember which one. I think it was last wipe. And it felt awesome, right? I wasn't going to be able to buy that for 3 trader levels or something. It was like, got that like really early on. But once it was gone, it was gone. And it felt like a, you know, special commodity that I could use for doing PMC, you know, kill quests or whatever, right? Or even just to like progress through the game, hide out, just like wear it, whatever. So yeah, I don't know. I just think that is a fundamental thing that's like the next step on in all this stuff, is that the traders need to stop selling as much stuff. You shouldn't be able to build the meta weapons with trader items. The best attachments should be finding raid only. I talked a little bit about this in my Alien Tech video. The best items for, like, you should be able to build something like okay with the stuff from the traders. If you get to max traders, like you shouldn't be completely punished. You're only able to run a toll fight, delete the traders completely. I don't think that's sensible. You can keep both. I think you can slowly scale it back and get to a place that's sensible. You know, like get rid of all the meta attachments from the Flea, make it so you can't make a meta mutant from the Flea. Maybe some of these guns you can only buy like once or whatever. Like you can still buy an AKM if you want to use your BP, but you find more of these things in raid, and you'd find like maybe a Scar one time and an MDR, but so are the lower tier players too, and they're finding more ammo to go with it, right? Like they find an MDR and it comes with 15 M61 and some M80, you know, to go in it, because it's like it's pointless otherwise. And like maybe some attachments are relevant for the gun, like things like that. It just needs to be that way, I think, because yeah, right now, like, and again, that's actually even better for casuals too, and players who don't play as much, or players that are new, or players that don't have high trader rep, because they're getting access to gear that they would never see otherwise. Like you just don't see a mutant.
That's my
otherwise
biggest...
until you get to tier 4, right? And you don't see a class 5 rig. Like I saw one class 6 rig in a stash, and that was it until I got to tier 3 traders, and then I could run class 5 again. It's like the traders dictate the gear that you run so heavily,
right,
that getting XP and trader rep is the only thing that matters in Tarkov for the most part, which is why the quests matter so much, which is why people grind them so
survival
hard.
matters,
and why survival matters too. Which is why I wanted to keep the survival for the quests, by the way. Like it's necessary, I think, in the current system, but it's busted that's the only way to do things. It's like it's not even balanced, important, right? Like yeah, like if you were looting in raid, like weapons cases and stuff, and you could find like the odd item that you like put together, and like, yeah, maybe it's not meta, or you could collect together a load of parts and make a meta gun if you wanted, and maybe you don't have quite enough ammo, whatever, right? There's gonna be downsides to like looting the stuff in raid, but at least you can like find it and like maybe top load it, and you're like making do with what you've got, and that's what Tarkov's supposed to be about, right? Like I just don't think it's like that right now. It's like it's the rush to Prapor 2 to buy PP and an AK. It's the rush to get to Peacekeeper so you can get 5.6A1. It's then the rush to get to Prapor 3 so you can buy a Corund, and then Ragman 3 so you can run class 5. Then you get to max traders and you can buy anything you like, basically. Like yeah, you can't buy certain items like Altons and stuff, but you can still get meta mutants and high grades, this, that, and the other, and all these things are relatively cheap because the trader economy is static and blah 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 blah.
Yeah,
I think it's the next big issue.
That, I mean, basically that component, dynamic traders, right? Lock secure containers, nerf scav, no found in raid on scav, and you just freaking massively buff the loot in raids. Then I feel like you don't need like you could remove found in raid. Yeah, you could remove found in raid, because like you can't the chances of you converting, like obviously the high tier stuff should be like extremely rare, and in which case I don't have a problem, like because it's so rare. If someone wants to give me 100 AKs worth of rubles and I'm gonna use that to buy 100 AKs, like I think that's fine. Like it's such a rare item, you know what I mean? But as you know, anyways, there's like some, you know, copium imaginational world in my head where it's like the perfect Tarkov. That's, you know, obviously not the case, but
yeah,
you know.
Man.
All right, bud. I know your brain's probably like mush.
Yeah. Just my brain is just melting now.
You need to like
it's melting.
Play, I don't know, Minecraft. No.
Yeah.
No survival game.
That's
Yeah,
nothing.
no survival game. It can't be anything to survive. You need to play like Fortnite. Dare I say it?
Call of Duty.
Yeah. All right. We're gonna wrap it up there. We've gone on long enough. Thanks everyone for tuning in and listening to us ramble and rant about Tarkov. And we'll see you next week.
Catch you later.